Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to part 3 of What If I Was Reborn in Avatar: The Last Airbender as the world's greatest waterbending prodigy. Let the tale begin. Chapter 61. After a week of meditation and hanging out with you, I was ready to leave the tribe once again, this time with Sakura by my side. We said our goodbyes to everyone and marched towards the Fire Nation, with one thing in our heads: killing Ozai. Sakura was obviously nervous about this plan, and maybe I shouldn't have accepted her ideas so fast. Now she has to risk everything she has worked for, in this, when I just could have waited for the Fire Lord to open for an attack. After walking for an hour, I summoned Cheshire and Ursoc, with Cheshire being the key, fire he who would fly us to the Fire Nation, saving us time and money on this endeavor. But even with Cheshire being our transportation method, it would take us 2 days to get to the Fire Nation border, though this was an immense improvement to our other alternatives. Now, my father's name is Akon Lakin. He loves playing chess and poker, he has an addiction to chocolate and hates mosquitoes, his favorite sport is fire catcher, and he loves Earth Kingdom music, but he doesn't let anyone know, for political reasons. Sakura said, breaking the silencer. He is a sucker for romance and loves his family. If you want something from him, just call him Papa or Grandpa. He will melt at that, quite literally. Oh boy, this is going to be very entertaining, Cheshire purred in laughter. What am I supposed to be? Ursoc shouted in question, wondering what his role was. You, two are his pets? Sakura said, somewhat uncertainty. Just don't talk, normal pets don't talk. Ursoc looked at her and barked, bark. Fire bears, they don't, barking is for. Sakura sighed, we will work on that. A pet. Cheshire hummed, I can finally be an asshole and people will love me for it. I chuckled, all right. I think I got it. Now, on to the next thing. Sakura sighed, if you show too much fire-bending prowess, many nobles will try to get your hand for their daughters, so try to keep a low profile. Arranged marriages, great. I see. We continued our trip mostly in silence, with Sakura telling us about all the customs and things we had to expect, from how to behave around other nobles and what to do on certain social occasions, giving me specifically a full walkthrough on how to behave in the first stage of our plan. That was fitting in and getting some political allies. All the plans were so overly complicated that I was starting to think Vatu was right, that it was best if I just went and slayed that bitch. No political games in the middle. But I decided to do otherwise, because like I had said, worst case scenario I end up killing him. Best case scenario I end up killing him. The difference between the two was the process. One was short, the other was, well, considerably more time-consuming. Though not all things considered, this overly time-consuming plan could bring me some unforeseen benefits. For one, being a noble, I would have access to a firebender teacher, being the element I lack the most in skill, if you don't count airbending, which I suck. The point being, I would abuse the fuck out of my recently acquired noble privileges to get in a firebending school and learn the bases and master my third element. Though I didn't consider myself a master in any bending yet, I had a high standard for it. For me to be a master in my terms, I had to master the element with all their respective subcategories of bending. After approximately half a day flying, we descended on a nearby unnamed island to set up our camp. If we continued at this pace, we would be at the Fire Nation by tomorrow before midnight. So, you want me to call you sweetie or Akira? Sakura teased, getting comfortable inside her sleeping bag. Akira, please. I did not like her calling me sweetie, it was weird. Akira, the Fire Lord, heh, Sakura chuckled, things sure are getting interesting, I am sure it will, regardless of what happens, I chuckled. Azula POV, father had called me back to deal with some political situations, not exactly the best moment for it. But with the day of the black sun above us, it was to be expected, attacks could occur during such a day. And who better than to ensure everything goes accordingly to our standards? For one, there was a very high chance the Avatar and his little friends would attack, which would provide me the chance to play with the Avatar a bit. Maybe even capture it, if I played my cards correctly. That, of course, was only a big if. We didn't know for sure if the Avatar was going to come or not. We are going back. Yay! Ty Lee giggled. Your happiness is deeply upsetting, I muttered. I envy your naivety, orders from the Fire Lord himself, I said with a final tone. I couldn't wait to be back, and show Father once again why I was the best option he had. The best heir. That I was better than Zuzu in every way. IROPOV, the spirit realm was different. At first I didn't understand why, but a few glances around showed me the answers I was seeking for. Vaatu was missing. At first, I panicked. Aang was nowhere near the skill he needed to defeat a foe like Vaatu. But seeing how calm the spirit and physical realm were, it meant one of two things. 1. Vaatu was still in a prison, but a different one, or 2. Someone had merged with him. Of course there were other possibilities, like a more powerful spirit killing him that would in turn force him to reform inside Rava. But something told me that wasn't the case here. For some inexplicable reason, I had a strong feeling the world had two avatars now. One for order and one for chaos. The world is changing, and for once I cannot know if those changes are for the better, I sighed. Chapter 62. After a long flight, we had arrived at our destination, and I was having a lot of second thoughts about this. Politics weren't my game at all, but once again, I found myself around a little corner, one that I like to call, it's worth a shot, at the very least. My meeting with my grandparents? God, that sounds wrong. Anyway, my meeting with my newly acquired family members was not as I expected. I was prepared for some type of harsh treatment, not to me but to Sakura. I mean, what parent would just accept their child being 18 years away from them without coming to visit? Well, they were pretty okay with her, accepting her decisions, mostly because they were under the assumption she was learning about the Airbenders and their culture. She was apparently a researcher, one of those that explore old shit to get knowledge. Another thing I learned as soon as I got home was that her nickname was Sakura, the reason why she had chosen that as her fake identity, though I suppose it wasn't a fake identity, just her hiding behind a truth, kinda smart actually. Immediately after my arrival, I was greeted by two overly affectionate grandparents, who hugged the ever-living shit out of me as soon as Sakura introduced me. For them, this was normal. For me, it was weird as shit. A few minutes later, after exchanging a few words with them, I was guided to my room alongside Ursak and Cheshire, mostly because I would probably get lost if I didn't have one of the butlers guiding me. The house was massive. Once I was in the room, I was a tad shocked at how loaded Sakura was. The room I was given was bigger than any other room I had ever had, bigger than any house I had the pleasure of living in. I had 2 fucking living rooms in my room, one for visits and one for personal visits, according to the butler, but that was just the tip of the rich iceberg. White marble floors, gold decorations, and more. This family was rich, very rich. And she wants to be a maid? Cheshire was the first one to talk. As soon as the butler left, she probably had a maid for the maid. Well, whatever makes her happy, I chuckled as I jumped into the really soft bed. God. I think I will take this mattress for me. It beats sleeping on the floor or the ground by a long margin. I had found the love of my life with this mattress. It was, no words could describe the texture, and before I knew it, I dozed off. The next morning, I woke up groaning, my body refusing to let go of its newfound soulmate, the mattress, but with determination and a lot of willpower, I blinked away the lingering yet sweet haze of sleep as I groggily sat up on my bed, rubbing my eyes while stretching. Taking a look around, I noticed the window in my room was open, revealing a sunny day. And considering Cheshire was still sleeping, and so was Ursak, it meant someone had entered my room. This overly comfortable mattress was a liability. If I can't be alert, I can die. Taking a deep breath, I jumped out of the sweet but dangerous prison of my bed to find Fire Nation clothes folded neatly on my night table. Meaning it was the butler or a maid that had entered my room, for those clothes were not there the day before. Sighing in defeat, I strip off my clothes, putting on the ones my fake family had so graciously provided me with. As I do so, I felt something watching me but not moving thanks to my elemental senses. In a mild shock, whoever had entered was still here. I jumped back, turning around, with my eyes being immediately drawn to the bathroom, where I had felt the presence. "Morning, young master." As the young maid bowed, a single thought occurred to me. I was still as I came to this world. Well, not this one, but you get the gist. I was naked. Normally I don't have any problems with nudity, but as a man, I struggle with a problem in the mornings. All men, or at least most do, one that I prefer not to blind the little maid with. I mean, I don't even know her name. Jesus! For the love of, why are you here? I exclaimed in shock and mild embarrassment while putting on my underwear in a rush. I did not want her to see my morning wood. The funny thing is, the maid was completely okay with it. Not in the okay sexy way, but in a way that said, I had seen so many people naked to the point I had become immune to the effect known as getting flustered by nudity. "My name is not Jesus, master, and as for why am I here, I was assigned to be your personal maid," the maid answered, without skipping a beat. "Next time, knock," I said with a small frown while putting on my pants. "As you wish," the maid nodded. In the meantime, Cheshire, who had just woken up, was struggling to rein his unyielding need to laugh at me. "Leave, for now, miss." "Leah Ember," the maid answered before leaving the room. "Really?" Cheshire laughed. "You have Vatu inside of you. And you panic when someone sees you naked? Look, I don't have anything against it. Yes, you do, Akira. Just accept it. Heck, she was pretty, but I don't like surprises." I sighed, which was also true. Like 80% of my panic was not knowing someone was there while I flashed them. Unbeknown to me, of course, if I ever flash someone, I will have control of the situation, and not. Okay, why am I thinking of that? Get back to your standard train of thought. "Young master, after you finish talking to yourself, please come down to have a balanced Fire Nation breakfast. Lady Lakin is waiting for you," Leah said through the door. Chapter 63. After asking my grandparents and mother, God, that will take a while to get used to. Anyway, after asking them, or rather demanding them, some privacy, they ordered all the personnel to stay out of my room unless I myself asked them to enter. A man needs his privacy. After that, I started my day with a very delicious breakfast, and immediately after that I was told to go and explore the city while they discussed some stuff with my dear mother. Seeing I had nothing better to do for now, and our co-op plans were going to take some time, I agreed. Besides, I wanted to see the Fire Nation capital up close anyway. Before leaving, I was given a large sum of money to spend as I saw it fit. With no reason to reject the money, I graciously took it and started to explore the vast and rich fire capital. Buying shit I would probably never use. Eating in every restaurant that crossed my path, and tipping the servers outrageous amounts. But no matter what or how much I spent, I was nowhere near using the money they had given for one day. "Thanks for everything," I smiled at the waiter as I left. Tripping into someone. "Apologize," someone demanded. By the tone of voice, posture, smell, and demeanor, I knew it was a noble woman. Typical. "Sorry," I said, inwardly chuckling as I stood up, being mildly shocked at what I saw. Azula was the one I had just tripped against. "On your knees," Azula smirked. "I want you to apologize on your knees, beg for forgiveness." Oh well, this plan. The coup plan lasted more than I anticipated, 2 whole days. Well, a day and a half. "No," I said, matching her glare. "I already apologized." "I wasn't asking," Azula said, glaring at me. "If this crazy-ass bitch thinks I will kneel and lick her boots just because I crossed her paths, she is in for a surprise." "Okay, still not kneeling though," I winked as I walked out of the restaurant. "Holy macaroni!" he talked back to Azula. Ty Lee commented in awe, and how did I know it was Ty Lee? Well, she was doing a cartwheel while talking. "Who are you?" Azula asked. "Akira Lakin," I replied, without missing a beat, all while still walking towards the door. "The Lakins don't have anyone around your age," I commented, and how did I know it was her? Well, her voice, body posture, and eyes screamed she was so over with everything. She would have fit well in my old world. Mother and I came back. I was born outside the Fire Nation, I shrugged. Then I can understand your stupidity. Allow me to give you a second chance to kneel, Azula chuckled. Here in the Fire Nation, my word is law. By all means, princess, make me kneel, I challenged, shocking both Mai and Ty Lee. Very well, I shall indulge your suicidal thoughts, Azula sighed, trying to look bored, but she was enjoying this. She wanted to make an example out of me, she wanted to make me kneel, and in the process she wanted to make me suffer. He's dead, Mai muttered with a sigh. I don't think so, Ty Lee giggled, landing in front of Mai. The way he walks, and presents himself, and the color of his aura are very scary. I think he has a chance. Oh, maybe we can't match them? Is she really playing matchmaker? I asked Azula. Don't pay too much attention to her, all the brain power she has. It's used on her acrobatics and in this type of thing, Azula replied with an annoyed expression. So? Still up for me making you kneel? I chuckled. The only way I will kneel is if someone is strong enough to make me. I winked. Very well, follow me, Azula ordered, and just because I had no fucking idea where we could fight, I did as I was told. And I walked behind Azula. A single thought came to my mind, that after beating her I would have to take Sakura out of here, and come back later to kill Ozai. For I knew I was going to win this petty duel, fucking the coup plan. Azula POV, I have but one day in the Fire Nation and I already have to show an insubordinate idiot why he has to obey my every command. Though Ty Lee was right, this Akira was no normal guy. I also could tell he was a warrior. I wonder how long it will take me to break his bravado. He seems confident of his skills, overly so much that it will be a pleasure to break his confidence. To show him why I was the best of the best. So where are we going? Akira asked, with a yawn. He was bored. He was going to fight me? And he was bored. That wasn't confidence, that was stupidity. To a place where I won't burn the city while teaching you respect. Neat, Akira chuckled. Ty Lee POV, a boy. A handsome one. And one with enough metaphorical balls to stand up to Azula. Finally! Someone that could date her. Azula is always complaining no boy ever hits on her, and how could they? Every single one of them is afraid of her. But this Akira wasn't. He had all the check marks on my Azula dating profile. Handsome, check. Confident, check. Well endowed? Well, there is no way a man with such confidence has a small BFF, so, check. From a noble family? Check. He was the grandson of one of the richest family in the Fire Nation. Now all he had to do is survive Azula long enough for her to crush on him. And everything will be okay. I am so excited about this. I giggled. I don't understand or comprehend how your brain works, my side, or if you even have one to begin with. Chapter 64, watched by a few dozen spectators that had followed us, Azula and I got ready for our battle in the training yard the Fire Princess herself had selected. Tell me, began Azula, is this what they call stupid male pride? With a low chuckle, I quickly devised several possible answers for that. Before deciding I might as well annoy her. Who knows? I shrugged, with my arms crossed. Besides, it's only stupid if you lose. Well, I hope you don't disappoint, Azula smirked, getting into position. I smiled at her and said nothing. Disappoint? If someone was about to be disappointed it was me, though I suppose she also will be disappointed. She couldn't touch me. Very well, I shall indulge you. I smiled as I uncrossed my arms, getting into my own position, drawing from my sword lessons, with legs parted slightly for better support. The same goes for you. Please do not disappoint, I added, with an inviting look, telling her to attack first with just a glance. Azula noticed, and with a smile of disbelief, she attacked. The torrent of blue fire coming at me was deadly but boringly predictable, and copying her motions, I parried the attack easily with one hand and attacked with the other, my power far from being at its best. I was after refraining from using Vaatu and his emotions to fuel my fire. Azula dodged the attack, jumping out of the way towards me, closing the distance between us, showing just how agile and fast she was. She then grabbed my hand before I could move out of the way and tried to burn my face, but with a smile, I grabbed her fist, stopping the attack before it even began, diffusing it with my own fire bending. Not bad, but too risky? Wouldn't you agree? I smiled, throwing her into the air with a single hand. Azula chuckled in mild amusement as she maneuvered graciously to the ground. Without saying anything, she lunged at me, each kick and punch followed by a deadly torrent of blue fire, but I simply smiled, slipping away without much difficulty. Keeping my eyes on her as to avoid receiving any damage. So, is this all? I inquired, kicking the little princess a few meters back. No, Azula replied, with a glare, summoning her favorite technique, the lightning. How interesting. I commented with awe, studying the motions she was showing, learning every little detail I could. Copying her motions and remembering what I had read and watched about this deadly technique, I closed my mind and separated my chi while copying her motions, and easy enough, I had generated my first lighting. This was so shocking Azula herself lost composure for a second, but soon recovered, shooting her lighting that clashed with mine. I took the blinding explosion as a chance to close our distance and deliver a punch to her stomach with enough strength to make her double over, spitting a bit of blood. She gasped in disbelief for a short time. I must thank you for teaching me how to use that technique. One thing was reading about it, but to see it in motion, it helped me put all the pieces together. I smiled at her, kneeling down to see her eye to eye. Azula growled, "Now, I will show you what I am capable of." I sure hope it's 1,000 times better. I smiled deep down. It pleased me that she was going to start taking this seriously. Otherwise, this battle was nothing more than me beating her. I continued to study her base and forms, copying her techniques and adapting them to my own style as I battled her. What I had yet to achieve was creating blue flames. I had so far achieved purplish flames that were quite hot, but no as hot as the flames Azula herself was using. Well, princess, not that this hasn't been entertaining, but I have things to do. I smiled. I had for one been humoring her for a good half an hour. I wanted to do something else. I had, after all, learned more than enough from this little duel. With a sigh I dashed at her, dodging her attack. Once I was in front of her, I created a curtain of smoke and jumped behind her, while she tried to figure out where I was, and then proceeded to hit in the back of her neck, with a strong chop, knocking her out cold. He won. I commented in disbelief. OMG. Ty Lee giggled, running towards me, while I kept my guard up. I had no idea what she was going to try. Are you single? As soon as that question left her mouth, I heard a beep in my head, like the one people used to hear in the 90s while trying to connect to the internet. I am. I replied, wondering if she was trying to ask me out or something. Not that I was against it. Ty Lee was one of the 7 Fire Nation girls I would without doubt smash. The other 6 were her sisters. Jokes aside, I would not say no if the chance happened to be available. Then again, she could be trying to set me up with Azula, and I'd rather be single. Good! Would you like to go out on a date with a very pretty girl? Ty Lee giggled. Oh, thank goodness she isn't trying to set me up with the Arkham case. I would be delighted. I smiled at her. Yay! I'll be in contact soon. Ty Lee smiled, running back to Mai, who was repeating over and over again, the fact that I had won as if said fact was impossible. Well, I'm off. I waved at them, leaving an unconscious Azula, a very happy Ty Lee, and a very confused and broken Mai behind. From this battle, I had learned a lot, one that in terms of technique, Azula was leagues above me, for now. But in raw power, experience, talent, speed, and endurance, I was superior to her, being the sole reason I stopped her on this duel without much problem. Chapter 65. After my little duel with the Fire Princess, I went back to exploring the city before going back to the Laken's home. Wondering when my date with Ty Lee would be, I was genuinely curious. With a smile, I entered the house, being greeted by Sakura. "How was your day?" Sakura inquired. "It was interesting," I chuckled. "I had a fight." Sakura eyed me for a second, before asking, "A fight? With Azula?" I sighed. "Did you win?" Sakura asked. "I did, and learned a lot from her. I nodded, surprised she wasn't scolding me for fighting the fire princess. Well, now we wait, Sakura sighed. For what? I blinked. To see if the princess will take this as an insult or a challenge, Sakura sighed. Probably an insult. That girl is in serious need of psychological help. We'll see. And the days passed, and I was fully expecting the fire princess to come for revenge with an army, or her father to declare me a traitor to the nation, but surprisingly enough, none of that had happened yet. So I took my sweet time exploring the city and every little restaurant I could get my hands to. I wasn't gonna lie. I was enjoying this. It was relaxing. None hated me here, being a noble and all. I was loved by some people and ignored by others, which in turn made my empath powers for the first time in a long time feel good. Especially inside the Laken's home. Sakura and her parents love me. And as corny as it sounds, it feels good to be loved. Especially when you can freaking taste like food every emotion. As for the date I was promised, well, I was still waiting for Ty Lee to come, but by this point I was sure Azula intimidated her out of the date. I can't picture Azula being okay with Ty Lee dating the guy that defeated her. Oh well, I chuckled. Ty Lee POV, when I told Azula she had a date with the big, strong, handsome, and powerful Akira, she flipped. It was adorable seeing her getting flustered. I knew she didn't dislike this, otherwise she would have let me know very violently. Instead she was nervous. For the first time in my life, both in mine and Mai's life, Azula was nervous. Why would I date the guy that humiliated me? Azula muttered, trying to sound angry. At first she was, but now that the prospect of a date was on her horizon, that anger was gone. She was intrigued by Akira, about his prowess in battle. She wanted to date him. I have to agree with Ty Lee. God, that sounds wrong, Mai sighed, but he seems like your type. Yes, powerful, handsome, and well-equipped, I giggled. Well-equipped, indeed he was. His techniques were flawless, Azula commented, with the sexual innuendo flying over her head. She was going to need more help than I had originally anticipated. She's like a baby on this matter. I might learn a thing or two, improving my own technique. Mai sighed. So, are we doing this? Come on, Azula. I know you like him, I teased her. Fine. Azula relented. First time for everything, but you two better help me. For if I fail at this mission I will burn you two down. And there was our old Azula was back, barking at us. Don't worry, if Akira doesn't kiss you by the end of the date, I will jump into your fire. Yep, that's how good I was. As long as you two have that clear. Azula nodded, fire igniting on her hands. Very well, I will go to this date, and like everything I will succeed. Burning anything on my way. By this point everything was burning around her, while she laughed like a maniac. Alright, first tip, tone that down, a few hundred levels. Maybe I should have promised another thing. We are going to die. She will scare Akira out, and we will burn, Mai whispered to my ear. Don't be silly, Akira can take that and more. I sure hope so. Akira POV 2 days later, there were a few things I didn't expect in life, things I considered borderline impossible, like Sokka defeating me, Pakka being funny, Vada dancing, and stuff along those lines. Today, one of those impossible, or rather improbable things happened. Azula was at my doorstep, dressed with a cute outfit instead of her uniform, looking at me. Her emotions made everything clear. Ty Lee had tricked me. Azula was nervous, which was something I didn't expect from her. I expected anger, hate, maybe even envy. But none of that, just a girl, a crazy one at that, being nervous. I have come for our date, Azula stated. I see, I replied. Do you need more time getting ready? Azula inquired with a very awkward smile, her emotions flaring with the idea of getting rejected, making me wonder, why was she so invested on this? Why was a date with a random guy so important to her? I wanted to say no, and leave her, but I just couldn't. Give me 5 minutes to change my attire. Add a compliment, Akira. She might be crazy but still looks kinda cute, and she doesn't need another reason to go even more crazy. I need after all to match your looks. though I doubt I will look quite as good. All right, that's good enough. Very well, Azula nodded, still with a very awkward smile, blushing a bit. I will wait here. Sakura looked at me and Azula outside from the window as I dressed. You are having a date with her? To be honest, when I accepted, I thought it was with Ty Lee. I sighed. The girl you defeated? Sakura inquired. Yes, I nodded. The Fire Princess? Yes, I nodded once again. I don't know if I should be proud of you, or angry, Sakura added. Meh, I'll be both. Proudry, don't worry, I doubt she will want to date me more than once. I winked. I don't know, Sakura commented with a smile. She seems kinda invested on this. Well, fuck it. Who knows, maybe she isn't as crazy as the show showed her to be. Maybe she's just an entitled child. No, Akira, you know she's crazy. Stop trying to find reasons to make this a sound decision. I sighed. Fuck. Chapter 66. You know the saying, don't stick it crazy? Well, guess what? That saying was absolutely right before today. I never had the experience of dating a crazy girl. And the boy was Azula crazy, but I couldn't really blame her. From our brief encounter during our battle, and right now on our date, I had gathered more than enough information about her to get a pretty good general idea of what she was and how she had come to be what she was. Azula was a firebending prodigy and a dedicated perfectionist, showing this during our date, as she even controlled the way she walked, making sure her steps were perfect and symmetrical. Showing she wanted nothing less about herself and other than absolute control. As for a psychological point of view, she is very smart, but her incredibly high IQ was eclipsed by her narcissistic and antisocial personality disorders, which had taken roots inside of her head, thanks to dear old dad, Ozai. As our date progressed, I questioned her without revealing my motives about her childhood, trying to sound like a guy interested in her upbringing, and just as I expected, she had started to show these cruel and sadistic tendencies from a very young age, with her father nurturing these behaviors with fake love while shutting down any good in her before it even began to grow. Thanks to Ozai, even as a child, she had proven to be cruel, having a sociopathic personality, showing almost no empathy or remorse for her actions, even when those actions harmed others both physically and emotionally, her targets usually being Zuko and her friends, Mai and Ty Lee. But, from what she was sharing, she wasn't always like this. Apparently, there was a time where she and Zuko were close before the monster of Ozai took a more active role in raising her. Showing that Azula was heavily influenced by her demon-like father, who was a monster in every possible way, leading her to a labyrinth without exit, as she believed she would win his love if she was more like him. However, that was impossible, for Ozai was a ruthless man incapable of love. And as Azula desperately tried to win Ozai's love, being like him, her mother Ursa and her drifted apart. Because as soon as little Azula started to emulate her father, being cruel and sadistic to win his love, Ursa started to scold her for her acts of cruel nature, which apparently occurred pretty often. With her showing clear favoritism to Zuko, Azula focused on trying to win the favor of her father. But without her mother's love. But none of that came. Ozai never loved her but did show favoritism to her. But without the love of the two most important people of her life, she was traumatized, shaping the fear that she could not count on the love from anyone, no matter how close they seemed. Which cursed her to be unable to trust others, and like her father, began to control those around her using fear. This, of course, wasn't what she had shared. This was the empathic version I had gotten with Powers, as she shared her story from a very delirious point of view, showing her grasp of reality was very broken, or that she was forcing herself to believe otherwise. Zuko was always jealous of me, Azula grinned, finishing her story, but behind her confident smile, I was drowned in a sea of pain, pain like I had never before experienced. True sadness, how in the world can she talk without crying, is beyond me. That's quite the story, I smiled, so I have another question for you. Very well, but that means you owe me 2 questions, Azula stated, in a demanding tone. Why did you agree to come and date me? I asked, knowing very well it was Ty Lee who had put her to this. I mean, Azula would not have this initiative, and besides, She was laughing even when I wasn't trying to be funny, meaning Ty Lee had given her some awful advice. I know for a fact this wasn't your idea, at least not fully. I mean, after winning our duel, I expected you to come at me, but not in a romantic way. Azula frowned and then smiled. Well, because together you and I will be the strongest couple in the entire world. With our powers combined, we will dominate the earth, she finished, lighting her hands in her signature blue fire. So, because I am strong? I chuckled. Basically, Azula nodded. So, you don't find me handsome? Why am I teasing the Arkham case? But as my mind questioned why I was doing this, I found myself unable to stop. I do, Azula nodded, stepping closer, her face inches away from mine, in the corner of the restaurant room I had rented. Good, I smiled. Her face was at this point so close to mine that I could smell the sweet fragrance of her perfume invading my senses, with her emotions showing a light tint of hope that I wasn't going to reject her. Why was she feeling this? She barely knew me and lost in this feeling of the unknown. The next thing I know is that her tongue was in my mouth. Her kiss was so instantaneous, so urgent that it overpowered all my senses as it sought some unreachable yet tangible feeling. I knew now why I hadn't outright rejected her. It wasn't because I pitied her or because of not fucking the plan. If that was the case, I would have kneeled the first time I met her, avoiding all of this. No. The real reason I hadn't rejected her was because I was like her. We were both broken on different levels. And stopping any resistance, not that there was one, to begin with, I let myself immerse in this feeling, as my lips mashed against hers, trying to flatten and destroy her mouth, in a wild desire for contact. She humbly pushed back, her mouth open, tongue exploring the moist space within my mouth, with my tongue doing the same. With Azula gripping my head firmly, showing even though she wanted control, holding my head as if to keep me from escaping. How broken was I? How broken was she? And how sad was it that I felt comfort in this kiss? Chapter 67, Azula POV. Maybe time stopped when his lips met mine, but the flutter inside of me only intensified. My heart pounded inside my chest as my knees got weaker. I was feeling weak, and for some reason I was okay with it. I could only focus on how soft Akira felt against my mouth, how aggressive and delicate his touch was, and how addictively he invaded all my senses. A part of me was afraid this was a dream. A part of me wasn't clear if I had dreamed this moment to life, like many times before with different things, but another part of me grounded me to reality, showing me this was as real as anything else. Behind this kiss there was raw and pure emotion, showing even here a battle for control, in the way his fingers held my head in place, as I did the same, in the way Akira kept his eyes half open, sneaking a peek every time he came back for air, just to make sure that, like me, this wasn't a product of his imagination. I still wasn't sure if nature rooted for this moment or if my mind tricked me into this wonderful moment, but every breath I took I smelled the now sweet aroma of a river, and for the first time since I have known myself, I didn't feel the need to win. If anything, the warm feeling of his breath on my face, although destabilizing, was inviting, making me for a brief moment consider losing against him once again, this time on purpose. But I wasn't going to let him win this so easily, so I held my place. He didn't fear me, and surprisingly I was okay with that. It felt good whatever he was feeling for me right now. Akira muttered as we broke our kiss, his eyes lost in the background. Akira POV, what the hell was that? I almost felt out of control, like if I had entered the Avatar state for a brief moment and this was the result. Even now her lips looked inviting. Welcome. I had no words. A part of me screamed I should fight this ludicrous feeling, that I shouldn't have any feelings for the Arkham case, but unfortunately for that part of me, what I was feeling was not only overwhelming of his own, but even more intoxicating with what I was feeling from Azula. Like a drug almost. No one before her had this raw feeling of wanting me so bad. I wanted her. I didn't know why nor I cared. I wanted Azula. And I was going to have her. Akira. Azula was about to say something, but this wasn't the time to talk, so I took a step forward, softly putting a hand on her face, demanding in a way another kiss as my lips were getting closer, the smell of her hypnotic beyond reason. She immediately shut up, and once again aggressively pushed back, her lips mashing against mine, and once again I felt that particular wave of warmth that made me question everything, like why was I feeling this, when I barely knew her. I continued to kiss her, as the taste of her silenced all my thoughts. She almost felt delicate under my arms, like a porcelain figure that could break if I pressed her too hard, making my whole body tingle at the feeling, but it also felt so good, especially the feeling of her frame leaning against me as my arms wrapped around her felt nearly forbidden, yet so right. This would probably change a lot of things in my life, but I didn't care. Claiming her mouth was intoxicating, with the feeling being hungry and intense, the feeling her knees giving in, was truly magnificent. It was as if time had stopped right there for me to appreciate the moment, as we stood propped against the wall of the restaurant, glued to one another. As if no one else existed around us. Well, I have no words, I chuckled, breaking the kiss. You still owe me 2 questions, Azula stated, her eyes sinking into my core. As I answered her questions, I started to question my motives. I knew this was wrong, I knew all the cons and problems of this, but it felt so right, she felt so small in my arms, so mine. The worst part is even under all her defenses she had allowed herself to feel something for me. I could feel her raw desire for love, screaming at me not to reject her. The funny thing is, I knew I couldn't reject her, not anymore. That ship sailed a long time ago, for I felt something for her too. Tylee POV, at first I was nervous. Azula was going on her first date. She was so smart and powerful with everything else, but so socially awkward when it came to boys. But this boy was different, he didn't fear her. Not a single bit. I knew that, I could see it in his aura. That like hers was broken, even more than hers. So I made it my personal mission to put those two together, giving Azula all my knowledge about boys, like laughing if they say something, though she took this too seriously, laughing even when there was no need. I also told her to be the one to initiate the kiss, boys love that. But if I had to be honest, I expected a little kiss, a peck on the lips, not the full-out make-out session they were having. It was beyond my shipping expectations. The way they kissed was hypnotizing. I had never seen kisses like that, so powerful yet so delicate. Azula had a boyfriend. I smiled, there was no doubt of that. For how long? My boringly added, if the Fire Lord doesn't like him, that's the end of them. I have a feeling he doesn't care about what the Fire Lord thinks. I replied, for some reason Akira seemed like the type of man that didn't care what others said. His aura said that much, but that was just the underline. I have seen the aura of Ozai, I know with detail how much of a monster he is. And yet, beside Akira his aura feels like a kitten throwing. Chapter 68. After my first date with Azula ended, I went back to my house, with a single thought in mind, that there was no doubt I had feelings for her, and that the worst part was that I knew it was stupid for me to do so, or rather impossible. I had known her for maybe a day or so. And yet, even though I knew her to be crazy and funny, I just couldn't find a reason good enough to motivate me to cut her off from my life. Every time I tried to think about one, my mind would wander to the very moment our lips met, how soft her lips felt and how aggressively hot it was. Needless to say, Azula already had a feeling of possessiveness for me that emanated above her other emotions, like an animal claiming its territory. I could feel it, and if it somehow made me happy, to feel that, to feel her every emotion. I could still remember perfectly what she felt during our first kiss. At first she was scared of rejection, terrified that I would turn her down, then surprised I had reciprocated the kiss, and now she was elated with how things had resulted. It was weird, to feel every emotion coursing through her, like water in a river. But I couldn't deny it felt good feeling her lips touch mine. It was almost as if the world vanished around me, erasing any other emotion that wasn't her. Intoxicating my feelings. Well, I suppose things could be worse, I muttered, jumping into my bed. She seems like a nice girl. Chisar commented, maybe a tad violent, but who am I to judge human mating rituals? I rolled my eyes at the cat. I just didn't expect to develop any feelings. It was better when I didn't have girl problems, I chuckled. Problems? Are you two a thing now? Cheshire asked, confused. I suppose we are. I wasn't entirely sure, but considering how possessive the princess felt about me at the end of our date, it was safe to assume she saw me as hers now. Then what is the problem? Cheshire asked again. I don't know, I sighed, with a low groan. It's just that I didn't expect this to happen. In my mind I had a vision, an idea of her, and a single kiss shattered that. A single kiss shattered my barriers like I was a fucking sandcastle. I chuckled, taking a deep breath, and the worst part is that I am not mad, just scared. Of what? I have no clue. I then turned to look at the cat. I know I make no sense, but what I feel makes no sense. I suppose I understand, Cheshire purred. You do? I chuckled. I have known you for quite a bit, to have a general idea of how you think. The cat nodded. No matter how powerful you are, or how immortal you become, you are still a living being, subject to confusion, fear or the unknown and more, fear of the unknown? I inquired. You expected things to go a certain way, and now you have no idea where you stand, and that scares you a bit. Sometimes the things that scare us are not the things that can hurt physically us. Cheshire chuckled. Sometimes it's what we can't understand what scares us, and you can't understand this, not completely, I suppose. I sighed, wondering what if he was right? Was I scared I didn't anticipate any of this, or was I scared I wanted things to continue this way? That I wanted more of the Blue Fire Princess. Thanks, Cheshire, it's a pleasure. Cheshire smiled at me, with a warm tone. Azula POV, I had a boyfriend, a man that didn't fear me, nor my father. And he was all mine. I would make sure of that. Maybe I could bring him with me to my mission on the Earth Kingdom, ensuring no other suicidal girl tried to conquer what I had conquered. I can't believe you have a boyfriend. Ty Lee giggled, jumping upside down. You can't? I eyed her. There was no doubt I was going to win his heart and make it mine, I declared. There was no doubt? Of course it was. I never kissed a boy before him, or flirted with one. They all feared me, for a good reason. They were weak, pitiful, pathetic, and more. So all the information I had about this subject came from Ty Lee and some novels I wasted some time with. It intrigued me what romance was, though I never believed I would care for it. It was still entertaining enough. But Akira changed that. His rough and somehow at the same time soft lips changed that. I felt weak on his arms, little, fragile almost, and I liked it. I just couldn't hate the feeling in the way he held me as if I was a porcelain doll about to break, being so delicate with me but at the same time aggressive, trying to dominate our kiss. I of course didn't allow him to win so easily and fought for control, but still. The feeling was intoxicating. There was no ulterior motive under him. He cared not for my status or power. He just wanted me. So, now what? Mai asked. Well, now he joins our group, I stated. What about the possible invasion? Mai asked again. We still have some time before that. Right now, we must go back to Ba Sing Se, I replied. With Akira in my team, no one would stand in our way. The Avatar would fall to our hands in a crushing defeat. Awesome! Ty Lee smiled, but you should date him a few more times before you ask him to travel around the globe with us. I intended to do so, I said. I will wait 48 hours before going out with him again. Chapter 69. 48 hours after my date with Azula, I woke up to see the Fire Princess herself, Azula, in the living room of my house talking with Sakura and my so-called grandparents, in a very un-Azula manner, which almost made me panic, but a quick check to her emotions with my now very useful empath powers showed that Azula was actually just testing the waters, to see if there was any opposition on my family side that she would have to burn down to dust to get me. Honestly, I'm flattered. You didn't tell me you were dating the Fire Princess, my grandfather commented with a smile, feeling both proud and scared. I was planning to, I commented, with clear amusement, Cheshire's words still echoing in my head. I had to accept things not always going as planned, nor here nor in the spirit realm. I liked Azula, and I would be with her as long as that was a fact, something I had come to accept last night, after my crisis. Who can blame me? Even the best of us have some crisis. I'm sorry I ruined the surprise, Azula apologized with a smirk, but behind her words, there was an underlying insecurity. She probably thought I didn't tell them right away because I wanted to keep our kiss in the shadows, just how much I had broken her. No, it's okay, I shrugged, this just makes things easier. I winked at her, as I walked down the stairs towards the living room where all the family was sitting. Do you have any plans for today? Azula inquired with curiosity, her doubts slowly subsiding. I actually do have something to do, I nodded, and it should take me around an hour or two. Why? Did you come to take me out? I chuckled. Something like that, Azula commented, rolling her eyes, but I'll wait until you are fully available for it. Very well, I nodded as I slowly walked to her, kneeling to her seated level, and with a soft smile and no warning, I pressed my lips against hers, softly, delicately, and full of desire, clearing any doubt in her mind I was hiding or ashamed of what had happened between us. And as that brief second elongated, I could feel her insecurities melt away as I inhaled her shaky breath on my face, feeling the warmth of her skin on mine, and once we broke that short but meaningful kiss, I could still taste her lipstick lingering on my mouth as a gift just for me. Azula was pleased with the kiss, while everyone else present was stunned. Where can I find you after you finish whatever you have to do? The Fire Princess inquired. I'll be back here as soon as I finish, I answered, leaving a stunned audience behind. When I left Azula in my house with the excuse that I had to do something, it was because I actually had to do something, not just walk around. I had to meditate. Mostly because I wanted to talk with Vaatu about a few things. I wanted to clarify some thoughts I had. For one, I wanted to ask him about what he thought about chaos and harmony. Chaos and harmony, Vaatu said, somewhat uncertain of my question and how to answer it. Yes, I mean, you are the spirit of chaos, but what is harmony to you? I sighed. Without harmony there can't be no chaos, for chaos without harmony becomes the natural order of things, therefore becoming harmony, starting a paradox. I chuckled. For something to exist an opposite must exist, otherwise its purpose becomes meaningless, I stated. Hot without cold is just a word. How do we know what hot really is, if we have nothing to compare hot against? Why are you suddenly asking this? Vaatu said after a few seconds of silence. Well, I have some doubts about what to do from now on. These last few days I had more than enough time to see things in another perspective. I chuckled. Are we agents of destruction? Or agents of change? After meeting Azula, I came to the conclusion we humans are the result of our personal experiences. The events in our life mold us. I was pushed to do a deal with you, just because I wanted to feel safe from the primordials. I never admitted that, but that was the underlining of my deal. So you want to change the world? Vaatu scoffed, realizing where I was going with the conversation. Most of the changes in human history are thanks to you and your chaos, I shot back, surprising the chaotic spirit. Chaos brings change, harmony brings stagnation, but chaos also brings destruction and death, Vaatu added with a smile. Yes, I nodded, but a short life of change is better than a long one of nothing. So answer my question, what is harmony to you, outside Rava, a meaningless concept, that even with Rava ruling, humans can't achieve, Vaatu answered with a tired tone. What are you planning this time? Well, for starters, I was planning on changing the world, by stirring up the events as I know them, by getting rid of a few players. I smirked at the spirit. Your original plan coming here was to kill the Fire Lord, and then go back to training, but that's not all anymore, is it? Vaatu said, with clear amusement. Killing Ozai at this point, it's more of a personal thing. He isn't much of a goal or a challenge anymore. I inwardly shrugged. What I really want, like I said before, is to drastically change the world I live in. My goal? To make it more interesting, chaos and harmony. I see now why you asked. You just wanted to clarify, and realize you just don't give a fuck anymore. Ha, very well. I will support this endeavor, Akira. Start an era of chaos in your own way. This helps me either way. Rava won't stay quiet if we interfere too much with moral affairs, so be sure to interfere a lot, and kick her ass every time she tries to get in our way. Well, that sounds like a plan, I chuckled. Chapter 70. After my talk with Vaatu, I went back to the house to see what Azula wanted to do. She apparently had the idea of introducing me to her father, so that we could go on a mission together. That, of course, wasn't the case. She didn't need to introduce me to anyone for me to go with her, but she wanted to. In her own crazy way, she was trying to set a public claim on me so that other girls would stay away from me if her fame didn't push them away beforehand. Seeing this was my chance to personally measure Ozai on a scale of how weak he was compared to me, I accepted. It would be fun to see the one responsible for the world as it is. This, of course, was a double-edged weapon kind of thing for me, as I was right now. I wasn't going to kneel or show any submission to him. I didn't want to, and even if I did, Vaatu would go crazy inside of me, flipping a metaphorical table inside my head. And this was all thanks to Azula. After that fucking kiss, the falsehoods I had been feeding me about playing the long game were broken the moment. Everything felt down like a house of cards the moment I allowed myself to feel something so real. Now, I didn't care anymore about the plan, but I did care for Azula. My feelings for her, or how strong they were, didn't make sense. I knew this was going to bring me more problems than anything else I had done in my life before, but I just didn't care. The worst part was, I knew I didn't love her. I liked her, but love was such a strong word. What I was feeling was more animalistic than anything, like a sense of possession. The moment I kissed her, or rather she kissed me, I just felt she was mine. Was I going to fall in love with her? Well, a few years ago I would have said no and laugh, but after all the shit I've been through in the span of almost a decade, I can say for certain, I have no fucking clue what the future has in store for me. Then again, I have never loved anyone in the romantic sense before, so perhaps this was love. But regardless of the exact definition of my feelings for Azula, I had to tread carefully with the Fire Lord. One word from him and Azula would turn on me like a hellhound. I needed to sink my fangs deeper into her core, for one day, she would have to betray her father for me. The palace is right ahead, Azula commented, pointing to the palace, with a sense of pride so strong it surprised me a bit. This should be fun, I commented. Azula looked at me, and with a smile said, it should, but please don't insult my father. I have my reasons to forgive our first encounter. Father, on the other hand, does not. So try to avoid getting him mad. I finally have a boyfriend and I would like to keep him alive if possible. Adorable, I chuckled. Don't worry, I'll behave. Or kill him if he tries to mess with me. Either way, works for me. Good, Azula sighed, her emotions flaring with relief. I knew this was important for her. I could feel it. The area immediately surrounding the royal palace was very dull, fully covered in rocks and completely devoid of any form of plant life. For someone, this would show a lack of concern for decoration in the royal, but this was actually a very smart move on their part, for this terrain made stealthy infiltration nearly impossible, for any guard would be able to see you miles before you entered the palace. As the carriage took us inside the castle, I took in detail the wall encircling the estate that separated the palace from the rest of the city, with guards in every single corner, a few hundred by what I could feel, and I knew there were more, but unfortunately my water and seismic sense were not enough to get an exact number, for the terrain was too vast for me to cover, but it did give me a general idea of what to expect for when I kill Ozai. Now, after all this, I expected a very impressive palace. After all, the Fire Nation architecture has always surprised me compared to the other cultures around, but in the end, it didn't. After all that built up, the palace itself was a single and very dull structure that had some charm to it, but not enough to be worthy of being a palace. The place was literally a freaking tower with 3 distinct wings in it, being considerably smaller than the Earth Kingdom Palace. Taking a deep breath, after the very underwhelming feeling of what this building was, I focused my senses on the larger wing of the tower. Yes, I refuse to call this a palace, when even the Water Tribe has something better. Anywho, after focusing a bit, I noticed a very dark chi emanating from the palace, which surprised me a lot. Not because something dark was in whatever that wing was, but because, before today, like right now, I had never felt someone's emotions. Or in this case, chi before. Perhaps I was going crazy. It's always a possibility. You are not. The only reason you felt whoever it was in that room was because his feelings were dark enough to warrant you to feel them. Vaatu chuckled. This is getting delightfully interesting. Well, if what I felt was someone's feelings, and they are this dark, they can only come from someone. Ozai, I inwardly sighed at the thought. If I could feel his feelings from here, in close person, that guy would put me in a mood. Oh, so that's your future in-law, Vatu laughed. I can't wait to see this. Perhaps you will call him Dad, Vatu. If I have to kiss Aang to shut you up I will. You wouldn't dare. Chapter 71, and just like I had originally deduced, the one that was emanating such a corrupted, repulsive, vomit-provoking array of emotions was Ozai. His mere presence had me at edge. It was like poison to me. It hurt both physically and emotionally to be near such a disgusting excuse for a human being. Ironically, like fire, he was burning me from the inside out. But this agonizing meeting had proven something. I was mentally stronger than I thought. Here I was sitting beside Azula, with an unyielding urge to rip him apart to end my pain. And yet he was still alive, wasting oxygen in my presence, like a worm crawling in a pile of shit. You are the one courting my daughter? Ozai asked, his feelings flaring with a strong sense of superiority, looking down on me as if I was a bug. Yes, I am, I nodded, trying to be as polite as I could physically be. Right now I couldn't focus too much on my manners. It was taking all my concentration to keep myself from jumping at him like a lion on its prey. I don't think he should even talk to the princess. A man I had completely failed to notice commented, and who can blame me? Right now, with this struggle for control, it was the perfect time to try and attack me. After all, my focus was solely on Ozai right now. Fortunately for me, your opinion doesn't matter. Azula shot back. He was born and raised outside the glory of our nation. Our princess is basically dating a commoner, my lord. The man kneeled in front of Ozai. I bet he doesn't even have a decent education or training. I could always rip you apart. That way you can personally see how good of a bender I am. I growled. If this idiot wanted to be my lightning rod in more than one way, I would be more than happy to oblige. In fact, I was fucking elated. Are you challenging him? Ozai inquired, his emotions showing he was delighted. Let them fight, father. It would be a show to behold. Azula smirked, happy with how things were going right now, and Agni Kai to prove himself worthy of courting me. If I have to kill an idiot to prove this decision, it's remarkably wrong then, so be it, the soon-to-be coal man stated. I will enjoy breaking your bravado, I said with a cold tone. I am one of the generals of this powerful nation. The only thing you will do is waste my time, the piece of coal commented, feeling confident behind his words. So be it, Ozai stated, excited at the idea of seeing bloodshed. You two will fight for your honor in an hour. It's so sad really, Azula sighed, to think we will have to replace a general in times of war, her words filled with excitement, but oh well, you win some, you lose some, as you wish, my lord. The corpse bowed, ignoring Azula, as he turned around, trying to shove past me, but I stood my ground, and in turn it was the idiot who fell into the ground. The only one that can push me, in all heaven and earth, it's me, I started with a cold tone, bowing to the trash named Ozai, before leaving the room. Immediately after leaving the throne room, I waited for Azula outside, where she congratulated me with a very passionate kiss. Father doesn't hate you, and now all you have to do to win his approval is squash that insolent bug who tried to separate us, and considering you defeated me, well, this will be easy, I chuckled. It will. Now, let's get you ready for this little show. Azula chuckled. Oh, and be a dear and make him scream. After Azula gave me some traditional clothes that were normally used for the noble Agni Kais that she for some reason had on my size, which reminded me that I had to talk to her about that later. Like, how the fuck did she know I was going to fight an Agni Kai, and more importantly, how in the extra fuck did she know my exact measurements to the letter? I didn't know my measurements. Anyway, after Azula gave me the clothes I needed to wipe the floor with the general, I waited at the designated location until the Fire Lord and some nobles came. Let's do it, I sighed, shedding the traditional shoulder garment as I turned around to face the general. Very well, though to be frank I thought you'd run away, the general said, thinking to destabilize me with weak-ass trash talk, as if a few sharp words would do anything to me. Perhaps I should make an example of your family after this, he said, smiling. Well, I had to give the man a prize. He had touched my buttons there by threatening Sakura, meaning the desired effect was reached. I had been destabilized by his words, but there's one thing you don't do, you don't fuck with someone crazy enough to date someone on the royal fire family. As soon as the words left his rotten mouth, my thoughts turned to Sakura, and immediately my anger surged, filling me with energy that soon bursted into wild flames around me. Good, commented Azula with a grin, pleased with the development. Surrounded by flames that could rival the sun itself, I blasted at the idiot, and shaking with anger I stopped just in front of him, observing his eyes, seeing them shaking with unadulterated fear, hinting he was starting to regret his decision, and not only that but I could feel he wanted to surrender with my empathic sense, but as he tried to muster the strength to do so, I simply glared at the terrified general, and slowly pulled back my left fist, preparing to attack. Begone! Bringing my fist forth, I blasted off the man from hip to head, incinerating his upper body before he even had the chance to fully reconsider his life choices. I win! I said, leaving a frightened audience, a very intrigued Fire Lord and a very, very happy Azula. Chapter 72. With my victory, came the approval of Ozai, which meant for now I was allowed to court Azula, which meant now I had to focus on breaking her attachments to him, for as long as Ozai remained on her life I would not be able to kill him, without breaking her in a way. So I had to be careful, for now at least. Considering how weak their relationship was, it would be easy to break their outstandingly toxic relationship, and when that day came, Ozai would fall to my feet. It wasn't anymore because killing him would save the people you cared about. At this point I just wanted to kill him for the sole fact his presence was like a knife on my stomach, his emotions were poison to me. Download app. It was incredible the amount of pain his mere presence was able to put on me, being until now the worst thing I had felt in both lives. It was as if my body was breaking apart over and over again. And not killing him made it only worse. So, will you come with me to the Earth Kingdom? Azula inquired, showing difficulty with the fact she was asking, instead of ordering me. It was cute seeing her trying to be polite, when she was hardwired to be bossy. Sure, I don't mind, I nodded, taking a deep breath. Very well, Azula smiled, together we will capture the Avatar, and end this once and for all. The Fire Princess declared with total confidence in her words. We will, no we won't, at least I won't help with that. With a sigh, I started to silently meditate on our way back to the city as I let the sound of the wheels crashing with the rocks of the road calm my mind, letting everything around me fade. I don't care if you like the girl, you have to kill that man, Vaatu demanded as soon as I entered my inner world. I thought you said, and I quote, "This will be fun, so why the sudden change?" I inquired. We are one, you simpleton. The pain you felt I felt. I do not want to experience such pain just for the possibility of you getting some action, Vaatu shouted in anger. Too bad I'm the one that takes the decisions here, I replied with a chuckle, but don't worry, he will die soon, in a month or so. If everything goes according to plan, Vaatu sighed, as if weighing his options. What is your plan then? Well, I plan to make Azula see there are things that are more important than power and control, I answered. Vaatu groaned at that. Please don't say love, as corny as it sounds. Yes. Azula craves that. Ozai sees her as a tool, her mother saw her as a monster, and so did the rest of her family. I knew it was corny, but it was true. If I showed Azula some love, she might get better. Very well, but be warned, Akira, if your plan doesn't work I will kill Ozai. I might not be able to control your body for more than a few seconds, but rest assured all I need is a few seconds to end his pitiful existence, Vaatu said in a dangerously low tone, shocking me, since when he was able to control my body, that shit was new. Are we clear, Crystal? I sighed, as one new problem added itself to the mix. Now the chaotic spirit of darkness had the power to control me. Granted it was just for a few seconds, but still, the thought of that occurring was very terrifying. Back at the mansion, I went to Sakura and started to tell her about my plans. Well, not all of them, but the ones she had to know, like the fact I was going to the Earth Kingdom with Azula to capture the Avatar. At first Sakura was not sure it was a good idea to do so, but after analyzing the political points this would win me, she went from saying it was a bad idea to encouraging me to do it. Her logic was pretty sound, showing her good grasp of war politics. After all, the more time I used on helping the Fire Nation with their military endeavors, the more supporters I would get, which in the end would put me on the throne. What Sakura didn't know was that I didn't care about that shit anymore. And while I wanted to share that with her, it would have to wait, for now I didn't want any more ruining my plan, and while I knew Sakura was my friend, I also knew she had priorities, and Azula wasn't one of them. "So are you really going to capture the Avatar?" Sakura inquired. "No," I chuckled. "I will probably kick his ass again though, which reminds me. I need a mask to cover my face. The last thing I want is for them to reveal something they should not." "A good idea. We can't let anyone know of the full extent of your powers yet." Sakura nodded, though capturing the Avatar and then showing your powers might win you some if not all the political approval you need, but that's a long shot. Not only that shit was a long shot, I didn't want to kill Aang. Yes, he was annoying as fuck with his pacifist mindset on a world filled with war, but that didn't warrant a desire for his demise. At much I wanted to kick his ass, but that was it. "Talk for yourself," Vaatu commented inside my head. "Alright." There was a part of me that wanted him to die, but to be fair, Vaatu wanted everyone to die, so he didn't count on my decision. "I will try winning the political favor in another way," I chuckled. "Fair enough," Sakura nodded. "When are you leaving?" "I have no idea. I wasn't paying attention to Azula on the way back." "Can't anyone blame me?" I knew. Ozai's emotions basically kicked my metaphorical ass. "I'm sure she will come later to remind you." Sakura chuckled. Chapter 73. It took us 2 weeks to get to Ba Sing Se. From our seats I could hear the Fire Nation Tundra tanks rumbling across the rugged terrain toward the outer wall of Ba Sing Se, and with this I knew where I was canonically speaking, if the enormous Fire Nation drill Azula had commissioned was anything to go by, and I had to admit the drill was a masterpiece that I doubted many benders could stop. The massive drill was a statement of the Fire Nation power, leaving a trail of despair, as it released steam from its pipes and metal spikes lodged into the surrounding land. Inside the Fire Nation drill's control room, where Ty Lee, Azula, and myself were currently seated around what Azula calls the commanding table, we were discussing about the plan to take the city as soon as possible, alongside one of the war ministers of the Fire Nation. As the conversation kept on stretching, I started to question my life choices. Being part of the military was boring as heck. Then again, least I wasn't suffering like the poor Fire Nation soldiers operating the machine. Their job was beyond mind-numbing. With how boring everything was, I couldn't help but let my mind wander to the deepest and most stupid corners of my conscience, where I wondered if the mask I had bought would suffice to hide my identity from the gang. It wasn't as flashy as the one Zuko used when he played the role of the Blue Spirit, but it should suffice. I kinda took inspiration from the Umbu masks in Naruto when I ordered the mask, so in theory it should work. Though, considering how stupid the gang is, I doubt I will have any problems whatsoever. This drill will bring Ba Sing Se to its knees. Nothing can't stop it. War Minister Chin boasted, once again for the millionth time, about the drill's magnificent power and its capability of breaching the walls of Ba Sing Se. If the guy knew how close I was to make him mute, he would shut the fuck up about the drill. Will the Earthbenders be able to stop the drill or slow us down? Ty Lee questioned, her emotions flaring with boredom, like me. To which Chin simply replied by stating that the drill's metal shell was impervious to any earthbending attack, once again boasting about the fucking drill. Not that I don't love hearing you talk about the drill, but if you keep on jacking the drill, I swear to God I will do something that I will not regret. And who do you think you are?" the War Minister inquired angrily. But before I had the chance to answer his stupid question, Azula beat me to the point and said, "Someone with enough authority to burn you alive without any repercussions." I looked at Azula and chuckled. "You heard the princess, Minister, now get to the point." The minister visibly blanked, and with a terrified expression said, "Well, in summary, it's strong enough to resist any attack, from the outside that is." "Well, it's time to get ready," Azula said, with a wickedly delicious smile. "Akira and I will lead this invasion. As for the rest, don't disappoint us." "Finally something to do," Mai said, the one emotion girl as I inwardly called her. Bored. She was never mad or anything, just bored. "Yay!" Ty Lee giggled. "I always wanted to fight against the famous Terra team of Ba Sing Se. Can I do it, Azula? Can I? Can I? Please!" Azula sighed. "Fine, just don't lose." "I don't have losers on my team, dear Azula. You lost to me, therefore you are a loser in a way." While I followed Azula, I kept tabs on everyone around me, especially my team. Ty Lee, for one, had immediately rushed to fight the Terra team, and by the looks of it they were pretty weak. She took care of them in the span of a few minutes. Well, she was doing the bare minimum, nothing more nothing less, fighting the Earthbenders only if they directly attacked her. Things as of now were pretty dull, but soon they would get interesting. Thanks to my heightened bending senses, I felt Team Aang approaching the drill, meaning I would soon get to fight Aang again. But then again, considering how weak he was as of now, that wasn't much of a challenge or something fun, more like beating a child with a bat, said child being quadriplegic, but perhaps seeing Azula fight him would sure be entertaining enough. If the Avatar comes I will let you fight him, I informed Azula. Why? Azula inquired, with curiosity. Well, I want to see my girlfriend, kicking his ass. That wasn't a lie, more like a half-true. I didn't want to fight Aang for two reasons. One, if I did fight him it would end with me capturing his ass. And two, well, like I said, a quadriplegic kid. I see, Azula chuckled. Then it will be my pleasure. If anyone else interferes, I will take care of it, I added. There is no need, Azula shook her head, with a smile. You want to see me defeat them and destroy their hope. Then I will do it alone to show you just how strong I am. Blue hot swirling fire lit on her hand for dramatic purposes. Very well, I chuckled at the adorable display. By the way, I still don't understand why you want to use a mask. Azula inquired. I hummed at that, trying to formulate a valid answer. Style preferences? Fair enough, Azula nodded, accepting my answer. Meanwhile, I could feel Team Aang getting ready to clash with us, and while the image I was getting from them was at best blurry, it was more than enough to know what they were planning. Unfortunately for them, their plan was destined to fail. Chapter 74. As the drill imminently approached the walls of Ba Sing Se, I patiently waited for Team Aang to arrive. Deciding to see things from a different perspective, I left Azula alone as I walked around the surface of the drill, my destination being where Aang was. I just couldn't wait another half an hour. Running towards his location, I sighed, finding Aang, who was wasting his time on a futile attempt to weaken the metal surface of the drill with his astoundingly weak water bending. While this was possible, his strength with the element was mediocre at best, and would never cut such a thick layer of metal, at least not before the drill had fulfilled its purpose. What I'd give to be a metal bender. Aang sighed as I rolled my eyes. If he wanted to be a mental bender, all he had to do was train, but considering he is so clueless that he had yet to notice a masked man standing right behind him, I say he won't ever achieve that, not that it matters. As I studied Aang and his movement, wondering when would he notice I was behind him, I decided to give him a little shock, but that would have to wait. Azula was coming, and announcing her presence, Momo suddenly shrieked in fear, causing Aang to turn around and catch me and the sight of a blue fire blast coming toward him. Yo! I waved at him, jumping out of the way. I literally spent 5 minutes behind him. That is remarkably sad, Azula commented, getting into her battle stance. Now, stay back and enjoy the show, she added with a smile. Aang during this exchange sent Momo away to avoid the poor critter getting caught in the crossfire. Taking a deep breath, Aang go into position, preparing to duel Azula and me. Adorable. As of now, he will barely make her sweat, and he thinks he can take two at the same time. She will be your opponent. I have no interest in fighting you, I stated, as I walked behind Azula. Burn him good, I whispered to her ear. Delighted, Azula smirked, jumping at him. With a smile, I sat back. As I got ready to enjoy the show, quick on her feet, Azula started to shoot several blue fireballs at him, leaving him no chance to counterattack, all of which Aang managed to avoid, showing his immense prowess when it comes to dodging. If only Gohan from TFT learned that. Aang, however, is not letting Azula completely dominate him, and with a quick swing blasts a gust of air her way, which Azula dodges by jumping over it, continuing her fireball assault, but Aang switches his bending using water whips to deter Azula's blasts. This, while flashy, is a waste of time. I know for a fact Azula can end this, but she's purposely delaying his defeat. Your waterbending sure is bad, I chuckled, making Azula smile. It sure is. But oh well, this just makes things easier for me. Azula winked at me, kicking Aang to the wall while sending 2 fire blasts at him. Aang, in shock, attempted to deflect the blast, conjuring a water shield. However, the idiot seemed to forget water evaporates, and it's not a good element to block fire if you don't have large amounts of it, so as a result he is sent back to the wall, crashing against it once again. This is highly entertaining, Batu commented, and I could feel he was happy, or less angry, which is technically the same for him. As their battle continues, several boulders are hurled downward, getting in the way of their fight, and frankly that can't do, so with a smile, I decided to make things more interesting, for me, of course, considering their battle would end in about a minute or so, with the factors being mud behind the wall and the soldiers that had infiltrated the drill. I wanted to spice things up a bit, making their duel a bit more risque, so with that in my head, I secretly started to earthbend them with my mind to make things more interesting by slightly changing their trajectory to force Aang out of the wall. I wanted to force Aang into the offensive, so I pushed him with the boulders off the wall, forcing him to create an earth wall to avoid Azula's upcoming blast. Taking the wall as a cover, Aang started to repeatedly attack her with all the elements but fire, pushing Azula back as she struggled to dodge the boulders and his attacks coming her way. Taking a deep breath, I changed my focus to the boulders, now changing their trajectory off Azula's path, as to not give the Avatar any more help. This gives Azula the opening she was looking for, and with a powerful fire blast destroys his defense as she proceeds to charge a lightning attack at him, but before she finishes doing so, a small part of the Alls of Ba Sing Se collapse, and Aang is swept off the drill by a tsunami of mud. Jumping out of my position, I grabbed Azula by the waist, stopping her from having the same destiny Aang had suffered. That was incredible, but it seems luck was on his side. Not good enough, Azula sighed. I didn't manage to kill him, let's be honest. You played with him like a cat with a mouse. That much was true. Azula had much more to offer in a fight, but she enjoyed toying with her opponents, which, by the way, I approve. To be expected of my boyfriend, to see behind me so easily. Azula chuckled. I do enjoy a good mouse chase. You can ask Zuko or Mai, or Ty Lee, or everyone in your school, I suppose. Alright, now what? The drill is toasted, I asked Azula as I ran with her in my arms. Any ideas? For now? Azula chuckled. For now, let them enjoy this empty victory. Chapter 75. After the drill incident, we regrouped in a Fire Nation base nearby Ba Sing Se, and while Azula talked with the local soldiers giving them orders about what to do now, I was figuring what to do about my relationship with Azula and how to make it progress. I had at most 1 month to change the way she saw me. I knew she liked me, but realistically it wasn't love, it was an infatuation at the moment, so I had to change that. Because I knew for a fact the next time I saw Ozai, I would kill him. So I had to act fast, maybe have more dates with her? Or more flirting. I really didn't know what to do. There wasn't anything I could do to make someone fall in love with me in less than a month, so I just had to try. Azula Ty Lee waved at her as she approached us. As she approached us, I noticed she was specifically walking directly towards me, and before I could ask her what she wanted, I felt a surge of pure desire coming from Azula, and the next thing I know my lips were locked in a sensual kiss, fueled with something almost primal. She kissed me like she wanted to steal my lips away forever, like nothing else mattered. The kiss was soft and moist, but also hot and breathy. This time she wasn't trying to win anything, but seeking union and closeness and the sharing of one breath, one sensation, one timeless and passionate moment that swallowed my very soul for a brief yet infinite moment. I could feel her every emotion coursing through her body, and I couldn't help but marvel at her beautifully flustered expression as the heat of the moment colored her face, tinting her cheeks of an innocent yet lustful pink as her tongue touched the deepest corners of my mouth, making our connection quick, electric and delicious, with the movements of her tongue becoming firmer and more determined. That was so hot, Ty Lee giggled. I concur, I chuckled as Azula broke the kiss. I can get used to this, Azula smirked, sitting on my lap. Unable to restrain myself at the sight of her body atop mine, I pushed myself against her, as if to avoid her escape, and began to kiss her softly, tasting her lips, savoring her lipstick, and little by little the intensity of the kiss grew. It became more rough, more needy, more savage. Get a room, I muttered, feeling angry and jealous. Well, that was new. Ms. Boredom was angry. You can't blame her for Zuko, Ty Lee whispered to her friend, and now it was clear why she was angry. Seeing us like this made her feel angry with the world. Well, fuck her. I don't care if the other fire princess is not here to kiss her, I will enjoy my time with Azula, because should I fail in winning her heart things will end. For the remaining of the week I trained with Azula, with most of the training being me copying her movements and adapting them to fit my own style. Little by little I could feel my fire becoming sharper, more lethal, and stronger. As I uncovered the secret behind her blue fire. Blue fire sacrifices quantity over quality by compressing the largest amount of flames possible on a single focal point, maximizing the power output of the flames by several folds. This I had noticed after studying her very closely, and thanks to that I had managed to master the secret behind the strongest flames of all. But I didn't stop at that. Having blue flames was just step one, so I kept on training. If I could only train one of my elements, I would at least master said fucking element. So immediately after mastering the art behind the incredibly deadly blue flames, I turned my entire focus on training my lightning bending. I wanted to be able to use it without having to do the fucking fusion dance. This of course was harder than it sounded, because this technique was 90% dependent of how well the user was able to bend and manipulate their chi, but this wasn't the hard part was training with it. See, lightning bending, it's very taxing. A single lighting takes a lot of chi. Now using multiple lightings tires the fuck out of everyone. Now for me this was not entirely the case. Thanks to Vaatu my chi reserves were massive, but even then after 12 hours of non-stop lightning bending I would find myself on the ground at the verge of passing out. I don't know why you are tiring yourself this much, Azula commented as she helped my tired body back to the camp. Perfection takes time, I winked at her. Azula rolled her eyes. I suppose, NPOV, for some reason I still had to understand. I couldn't shake my mind off the masked men that watched me and Azula fight, feeling a chilling sense of déjà vu as if I had seen him before, but the part one didn't understand was that my body, my entire being cried in fear. I wanted to run away the moment I saw him, and he didn't do anything to warrant such a reaction from me. He barely talked to me during the fight. Alright, so now we are 3 against 4, Toph commented. I think I can take 2 at the same time, Toph. It's now 4 against 4, Sokka started with a frown. Oh yeah, you. Toph chuckled. For the love of. I can still fight. Sokka shouted meh. Toph rolled her eyes. Whoever that man was, we have to be careful, Katara sighed. As we know, Azula is surrounded of dangerous people, so if short he must be skilled at something for him to be on that group. Well, he did seem agile, I commented. Chapter 76. 4 days I trained at the Fire Nation base, focusing solely on my lightning bending, and little by little I was cutting down the time I needed to control and form my chi to generate lightning. If I kept progressing like I was, in less than a month I would be able to snap my fingers and electrocute people. Needless to say, I was delighted with this development, showing that apparently fire was the element I had the strongest connection. Let's try this again, I sighed, as I slowly generated a lightning bolt on my right now, Chidori ripoff. I was training and that name was a joke, so don't judge me. You certainly want to be the best lightning bender, Azula commented as she entered the training ground. So how is the training going? Well, I no longer have to dance. So that's an improvement, but I still have to do some moves to get the desired result, I replied while demonstrating what I meant, creating another lightning bolt and shooting at a rock nearby that exploded upon impact. Impressive, Azula muttered in surprise. Perhaps I should train too, she added. Sure, I chuckled, but for now I'm going back to my tent. I really need to rest. Very well, I shall accompany you, Azula stated. Sure, I nodded. We can totally hang out. As we walked inside the tent, I took my shirt off and jumped to the bed. Azula blushed but soon recovered, sitting on my bed. So, what do you like to do when you are not training? Azula inquired, putting her hand on my leg. Well, to be honest, I'm all training, so I guess I don't have hobbies, I replied. I suppose we're the same, Azula chuckled. I don't have any hobbies, just goals. Goals I always achieve one way or another. I suppose you are right, I nodded, grabbing her hand and pulling her in for a kiss. But if I have to be honest, I enjoy my time with you more than anything right now, Azula chuckled. Are you calling me a hobby? No, I chuckled, kissing her once again. Azula POV, I didn't plan on this happening, and for me that was very weird. Everything in my life had been according to a plan, my plan, to achieve my ideal of perfection, and yet tonight I went off the plan, and what started as a friendly talk with my boyfriend with a few playful kisses ended with me on his bed, naked, smelling like him and him smelling like me. I wasn't mad, I was happy, excited, somehow fulfilled. I had taken Ty Lee's advice about being more sure of myself when it came to my boyfriend, and now here I was. I had broken so many rules, I had thrown nobility customs, alongside my plans out of the window, and everything was for him and I had enjoyed it. And now, I just couldn't get enough of him. We were both tired on the bed. That much was clear, and I was certainly sore after it, but I didn't care. I didn't want to sleep, not now, not after what we had done, and the best part was he didn't want to sleep either. He wanted me, only me. Seeing his eyes only looking at me, like I was the only thing in the world, made me feel powerful, craving something only he could provide, a feeling I could feel with him. Our connection had always been primal, and tonight was no different. Seeing him fueled with desire made me crave his touch, and push the boundaries expected of us. And I had enjoyed every second of this rule-breaking activity. The feeling of his weight on top of me, the way we both claimed each other like beasts on heat, was like nothing I had expected or read about. Before today's sex was nothing but a tool, a means to an end to keep the bloodline alive, something I would have to do, but not enjoy. But now it was something beautiful. I didn't expect to hold something so venal, so dear. I wanted to kiss him, bite him, taste his pleasure. I wanted to watch his face while he claimed me. I wanted his sweat to drop onto me. I wanted to drop mine on him. I knew he was stronger than me. He had proved that the day we met, but on the bed when I wanted to take control. He didn't fight it, he just accepted me, and in a way no one ever before had done. He submitted to my will not out of fear, but out love, and with carnal desires that were never there before. I remember how I got on top of him. I'd never done anything like that before. I was untouched, a maiden, and even then, there I was on top of him. I couldn't really believe what I was doing, but it felt right, it felt empowering. It was so intoxicating, so I held him and guided him inside me. It was marvelous how I could feel his groans of pleasure. I'll never forget such an experience. In the end, I was in charge and he liked it. He liked how I held his hands down. He liked pretending he was trying to break free and failing. Or the feeling when I let my bare breast touch his face. And almost immediately he went mad, bucking in and out like an animal in heat, making me feel he was about to split me in two. All of those experiences are engraved in my mind, as the night I claimed him, and the night he claimed me. Akira POV, I don't know how, but I had sex with Azula. One moment I was kissing her, and the next thing I knew we were both naked, lusting like a pair of animals, and I enjoyed every second of it. My empathic powers went haywire the moment we started to go beyond kisses, numbing my mind in a deep state of ecstasy that I knew I couldn't get out. And now that she was in my arms I felt guilty, not that I had slept with her, but that I was hiding so much from her. So that was human coitus, disgusting, Batu commented. I hope you already have a cub on the coming. I do not want to see that again. Chapter 77. After a couple of nights where all we did was train and let us submerge into the pleasure of carnal desires, I was more conflicted than ever. I had taken Azula to bed, knowing full well she might reject me when she discovers who I truly am. So I found myself with two options. For one, I could tell her everything and rip that band-aid off, or I could just go with the flow and let the canon events play out and try to avoid confrontation. But even then, she would eventually know, and the longer I waited to tell her the truth, the more painful and lasting the damage would be to our relationship. So with that in mind, I had devised a plan to tell Azula who I was, and what my goal in the Fire Kingdom was. So with my canon knowledge at hand, I knew when was the perfect time to do so, the day Azula, Mai, Ty Lee, and Zuko went to the beach. By that point Azula had already betrayed her father, meaning it was the perfect time to tell her about me, hoping for the best. You seem tense, and considering the amount of physical tension you have been releasing, that should not be possible, Batu commented with clear disgust on his voice. You do realize that even if she accepts you, she will die, right? It's my first relationship since I reincarnated, you old prude. I inwardly shot back. I knew Azula was going to die one day, but in the meantime, I wanted to enjoy what we had. Was that so bad? As I see it, you have more than two options. You can keep the old lie, you can tell her the truth. Or you can create a new lie, one that suits your purposes, Vaatu said with a low chuckle. A new lie? The thing about lies is that they always come out, one way or another, I sighed. PSFF, then you are a very bad liar, Vaatu grunted with irritation. I suppose I only have to wait and see, I chuckled. My question is, what will you do if she rejects you? Are you emotionally invested in her? Or is this a momentary attraction? Vaatu inquired, and to be honest, I had no idea how to answer that. I barely knew Azula, so I knew what I felt for her wasn't love, but not all relationships are formed with love. So far mine with Azula was like something instinctual, animal-like. Our bodies were perfectly made for each other. But I also couldn't deny, I enjoyed her company, but not to the point of saying I would die without her. That much was so far clear. I don't know, I'll probably be sad for a while if that happens, but besides I don't know, as you said, she will die and I will go on. I knew about my ageless predicament before I decided to continue our relationship, so maybe a part of me has always been ready to part with her when the time comes. I sighed. That's the same reason I know our time to part is not supposed to be soon. Very well, I would hate to deal with a moody roommate for all of eternity. Vaatu sighed. Well, I suppose I will leave you to enjoy this fragile relationship. I chuckled, as I felt Azula and the girls approaching. With my seismic sense, I was able to notice they were dressed a little different. So with curiosity taking the best of me, I turned around to see Azula, and the girls dressed as Kyoshi warriors. I will take a wild guess and say, you fought the Kyoshi warriors? I asked, eyeing Azula. The Kyoshi uniform on her was quite the treat for me. So much for warriors, Azula chuckled. We defeated them faster than I had anticipated, and now we have the perfect cover to infiltrate. Oh, so that's where we were on the cannon. Intriguing. So what's my role? You could dress up like one of us, Ty Lee offered, with an almost diabolical smile. No! Both me and Vaatu shouted, though the only voice the girls heard was mine. Ty Lee, don't be ridiculous. What kind of girl has such broad shoulders? They will discover who we are, Azula scolded, though for some reason I could feel her emotions flaring with curiosity. She wanted to see me on that uniform. As I studied her emotions, she turned her gaze at me. You will have to infiltrate the city and hide. I'll take care of the rest. Infiltrate bossing, say? Easy, that city sucks when it comes to security. The only reason they're nearly untouchable is that they have a big-ass wall protecting them. Sure, I'll be as stealthy as a cat. Awesome, Mike commented, giving me the thumbs up. Huh, her being nice and not sarcastic. Wait a minute, was that sarcasm? I don't know if that was a compliment or a very good insult, so I will take as both. Thank you, and fuck you, I chuckled. Smart move, I smiled. Without waiting any longer, I followed the girls from behind using the shadows in the forest like my cover, while my team advanced towards Ba Sing Se, and I couldn't help but smile. Soon everything would fall into place. I was but a few steps to tell Azula the truth. After all, if my canon knowledge was accurate, I was currently at the end of Book 2, meaning Zuko would soon go back to the Fire Nation, and Azula would soon lie to Ozai about what happened to Aang. My plan was not only to wait for Azula to lie to Ozai but for Zuko to redeem himself in the moronic path of justice. Why? Well, it was quite simple. Azula wasn't meant to rule the Fire Nation. God knows I like her more than I like any other human in this world, except for maybe Sakura and you, but regardless of my liking for her, she wasn't meant to rule, and as for me? Heck, no! I will not fuck my life by taking a forever role on the Fire Nation. I wanted to enjoy life after the war, and Chapter 78, the Fire Nation Kyoshi Warriors, as I called them now, arrived before the Earth King after 8 hours of travel, with me trailing them close behind, observing them very closely, and like in the show, the idiot of a king, the city had welcomed them, without even trying to confirm if it was them. After a short welcome, they were soon led to the castle, and from there I had to use my seismic sense to feel what they were doing. Frankly, this power alongside my water sense were the best skills I had, though. I hated that I couldn't hear people with them, though I could make out some of what they were talking about by the vibrations in the water and the earth, and the movements of their lips, but even then my information was never 100% accurate. Maybe it would be in the future when I developed the other elemental senses. With a sigh, I punched the ground, creating a hole, from which I would dig my way into the palace, where I would beat the crap out of a soldier and steal his uniform. That way I would be able to stay close to the action, ready to intervene if things got interesting. Well, I might as well make this interesting, I chuckled, as I bent my way to the castle, starting to sing hi-ho. It felt fitting, I was digging after all. As I continued to dig, I started to feel vibrations around me that hinted that something was beneath me, and by the large amount of movement I was feeling, it was more than clear it was humans, lots of them. This is odd, I am very deep underground, and yet I feel people around. Stomping my feet on the ground to get a better image, trying to verify my early assessment, I was shocked to feel there was a city under Ba Sing Se. How in the fuck didn't I feel this earlier? Taking a second to recover, I scanned the area one more time. Not only there was a city under Ba Sing Se, but it was a mining city, with around 200 or 300 people working on it. If I had to give a number, well, this changes nothing, I sighed. I had wasted enough time as it is by contemplating the city under the city, the Undercity? Not gonna lie, cool name, and I hope they call it that. Ignoring the city I had recently discovered, I continued to dig my way to the castle. Once I was directly under the castle, under an empty room, I opened a hole and jumped out of it, sealing the hole immediately. A quick scan around showed Azula and the girls were a few hundred meters away from me, so now, all I had to do was find my victim. Well, who is the poor? I stopped mid-sentence, noticing that there was no need to beat any guards for a uniform, for I was in a room full of uniforms. Not gonna lie, this is very convenient. Now, all I have to do is find which of these uniforms is used by the non-benders. Maybe I would have to put a little more effort into this infiltration. Oh well, worst case scenario, I burn half of Ba Sing Se, shaking that very Azula-like thought out of my head. I started to scan the area, trying to find those within the army that weren't benders, to copy their looks, which was harder than I had anticipated. Fuck it, I will take one of each, and look around, I sighed, taking around 12 uniforms. Before earth bending another hole. 5 hours later, it took me 5 motherfuckering hours to find out which uniform the non-benders of the Earth Kingdom used. And let's just say I was about to kill the Earth King myself after I found out they used the same uniform, with the only difference being the non-bender carry a weapon, usually a spear. But, I suppose it's better to be safe than sorry. Anywho, during this waste of time I put myself into, Azula had somehow managed to spread her influence to the point that Dai Li was slowly falling to her. I had to admit, politically speaking, Azula was terrifying. In 5 hours she had established herself as the bigger political player of the city. It's an honor to meet a Kyoshi warrior in person, I bowed, as I approached Azula with my new clothes now that she was finally alone with the girls. Azula smirked, and with a wave of amusement that emanated from her like the flames of a torch, she said, "What is your name, soldier?" "Bo Red," I answered, keeping a stoic face. "Bored?" I started to giggle on the back. That was funny. So you infiltrated too? Ty Lee giggled, as she hugged me. As expected of my boyfriend, Azula said, as she pushed Ty Lee off me. Not only did he infiltrate, but he probably gathered intelligence about the place, regarding their weak spots, manpower, and more. Am I right? Absolutely, I winked, but deep down I knew this was a lie. I spent 5 hours gathering a single piece of useless intel, which was what uniforms use each soldier, but in times like this, my canon knowledge comes to the rescue. The Earth King advisor is planning to betray the king, meaning you have a chance to manipulate him. The advisor, that is. I sighed. He is the one that controls the Dai Li, that much I gathered. Azula nodded thoughtfully. I have talked with some of the members of the Dai Li, and while they didn't outright say so, it was clear who was calling the shots. "Oh, and your uncle is here," I commented, as I remembered Iroh had a tea shop here, or something like that. "So that fatso is here?" "Well, I'll deal with him later," Azula chuckled. "In the meantime, keep your eyes open for more information." "Will do," I nodded. "Oh, I almost forgot, be careful with the advisor, he is famous for brainwashing people, so he might have a few surprises under his sleeve, nothing that warrants our worry, but enough to be careful, I added. Brainwashing? Azula chuckled. Well, perhaps this will be interesting after all. Chapter 79. It was the evening of my third day in Ba Sing Se after the infiltration. And while Azula focused on putting the city under her control, I kept an eye on Team Avatar and Iroh every time I could. From what I could gather, Team Avatar was collaborating with the Earth King after the betrayal of his trusted advisor, who Azula was manipulating to start a coup, something Team Avatar was no aware of, but the ever-innocent king trusted Azula, believing her to be part of the Kyoshu warriors, meaning they had to tread carefully because one wrong move and the Earth King would die. After all, Ty Lee and Azula were always beside him, keeping the edge over all the other parties, including the advisor. As for the advisor, he no longer had control of the Earth Kingdom's special army. Azula had made sure of that, ensuring her supreme control over them with fear, something that did wonder to the Daily. You all right there, old friend? A deep and familiar voice said, snapping me out of my long reverie. With a sigh, I look up to see Iroh, the Jasmine Dragon's owner, standing across the counter from me, carefully picking the right herbs to make his tea. You look like you had a lot of baggage. Sometimes talking can be the key to self-healing. I studied the old general for a second before sighing. I couldn't really tell why I was here in his tea shop. What did I want to accomplish? If I wanted information, I could have just kept tabs on him with my seismic sense from afar. Perhaps I came here to find some answers about my situation with Azula. The old general smiled and pulled a teapot from the heat, pouring me a drink into my cup. I know that face. I have seen it many times, he chuckled. You are hiding something from someone, and the weight of that secret is bringing you down. I chuckled. No wonder he was considered the most spiritually enlightened character in this world. He managed to read me like an open book with a simple glance. With a smile, I raised my cup to him, trying to put words to my troubled thoughts. How could I explain what I was going through without revealing my identity? Well, I suppose I could talk, I sighed, with a faint smile on my face. I am currently dating a girl, but she doesn't know what I do for a living, and I suppose I am afraid of her reaction once she discovers the real me, I said, trying to be as vague as possible. The troubles of the heart are never easy to heal or deal with, for there is no right or wrong answers, just paths that lead us to places of no return. Iroh hummed his answer, but if you want my advice, I would recommend you to be honest with her. A relationship formed with lies is as weak as a wet paper. I want to, I answered, but telling her right now could potentially damage something I've been working on. I need to be sure she will side by me when push comes to shove, I chuckled. Let's just say her dad is a very bad man, one that I have been tasked to end. Oh, I see, Iroh chuckled. Love and duty, the hardships of a young man, and an old one. He smiled, refilling my tea as he added, but, now I know, you already have your answer. Love is tricky and sometimes can be misinterpreted, but if you truly loved her, your duty would not stop you, nor the consequences of abandoning it. If only he knew. If I side with her family, nothing will stop them. I know, Iroh smiled. But siding with Ozai is not your destiny, is it? He whispered the last part, startling the fuck out of me. Don't panic, young Akira. I am not your enemy. You are very perceptive for an old man, Iroh, I complimented. It was weird to see someone getting the upper hand on me. I know you don't want to hurt Azula more than our family has already hurt her. I know that. Iroh smiled, patting my shoulder, but that's not love, it's pity. Sometimes you have to hurt the ones you love to wake them up, only then their true path will reveal itself. Was he true? Did I pity Azula? I certainly enjoyed our kisses and having sex, but did we have any connection outside that? Pity? That's a strong word. He is the right kid. As much as I hate that fat idiot, he is right. You don't love her. I wish you did. With someone as unstable as her by our side, the world would be in utter chaos. But alas, you are not ready to throw everything away from her. If you loved her, you would do it without hesitating. That's how irrational humans are. A sight to behold, Vaatu growled, adding salt to what Iroh said, before going back to sleep. Was that Vaatu? Iroh chuckled. You heard him? I asked in shock. No, dear no. Iroh shook his head, but I felt your energy fluctuate differently for a second. It was both beautiful and very scary," he sighed. "Oh, I see," I chuckled. "Let's say I manage to do what I want to do. What do you think will happen?" I asked. "You won't succeed in gaining her heart. She might love you now, but the moment your truth comes out, she will never forgive you." Iroh sighed. "The more love she gives, the bigger the hate she will unleash on you, but perhaps I am wrong. Perhaps you will change her before you reveal your true self. If not, don't beat yourself up for it. She is the result of our family's mistakes, including mine. I had always known that was a possibility, Azula hating me so much for being a fucking empath. I can read everyone's emotions and yet I can't seem to properly understand mine. What a joke." I chuckled bitterly. "It's easier to help and understand others." Iroh smiled sadly. "Our demons are always the ones that elude us, for it's easier to see the shadows in others than in ourselves." "Thanks," I smiled, as I added in a whisper, "this city will fall within this week. Leave if you want to fight another day, or stay and be captured. Consider that a tip for the wonderful tea. You are always welcome to come and drink tea with me." Iroh smiled and waved at me as I left his store, and even now, I could never get a proper read on that guy. Chapter 80. The days passed, with me doing nothing but training my hand-to-hand combat with Ty Lee every now and then, while deep underground, Azula alongside Fong planned the coup, with Fong having no idea that Ty Lee was under Azula's control. As for Azula, she was moving more than one piece at the time, so while she controlled the coup to her liking, she had also invited Iroh and Zuko to Earth King's palace under the guise of an esteemed invitation to serve the king tea. And, I had to be honest, I had hoped Iroh was long gone after what I told him. I had, after all, warned him about his niece, but even then he didn't flee. Even after knowing Azula was controlling everything around him, he decided to come to the castle, and as soon as he entered he was immediately surrounded by the Ty Lee, with a smirking Azula walking towards them, clapping her hands very slowly. I warned him. Why in the hell he stayed? I muttered, as I watched the Ty Lee circling the duo like predators. Zuko in response took a defensive stance. "It will take more than a few earthbenders to defeat us," he said, trying to sound confident, but his emotions betrayed his act. "Prince, please," I chuckled, "have you ever won against her?" "And who are you?" Zuko said, glaring at me with anger. "He's my boyfriend Zuzu," Azula answered before I had the chance. "As if," Zuko chuckled bitterly, "I doubt there is someone crazy enough to date you." That's the closest thing to damage you'll deliver in this fight," I chuckled. Zuko growled and took a step forward, ready to fight me. In the meantime Iroh took a different approach, winking at me. He calmly asked the audience if we ever heard why he earned the nickname, Dragon of the West, and while I knew the answer, I decided to see how things would play out. At this Azula rolled her eyes in annoyance, waving him off as she said, "I have no time for lengthy and useless anecdotes." Iroh chuckled at her predictable response before taking a deep breath followed by a torrent of fire coming out of his mouth as he exhaled. With this, he managed to break the Ty Lee circling formation surrounding him and Zuko. After that he ran, urging Zuko to follow him, but Princess Honor decided to do otherwise, challenging Azula to a duel. Iroh sighed, looking at his nephew with disappointment before he started to run once again. "Not so fast, General," I said with a smile, jumping to the action, running past Ty Lee and Zuko. This was my chance to fight Iroh, and see what the guy is made of. I followed Iroh as he ran out of the castle, waiting for him to get as far away as possible, so that we could fight without interruptions. I didn't want to capture him, just see how good was Iroh as he was now. He was out of his prime, that much was obvious, but even now I could feel he held a formidable amount of strength, and I wanted to see how much would that power push me. "You are not going to stop following me?" Iroh chuckled, as I ran behind him. "No," I shook my head off. This was, after all, a golden ticket to see the old general in action. Why would I throw that up? My chase eventually led us to a very secluded place, where the closest human was a few miles away. Even now this man was able to read me. He didn't run here to escape, he could have gone any other place, but he knew I wanted to fight him. "We are alone." Iroh sighed. "Now, I would like to ask that if possible I would rather avoid violence, but I know that request will fall on deaf ears today, am I right?" "I don't plan on capturing you," I clarified, so consider this a training match. Ah, I see, Iroh chuckled. Very well, if it is for educational purposes, I can't say no. It will be my honor to fight you. I smiled. The strongest firebender in the world, one that could have stopped all this madness if he wanted. You flatter me. Iroh smiled with a sad look on his face. Avatar Akira, can I ask you a question? I wanted to know why someone like him had allowed the world to fall into despair at the hands of his kingdom, the one he was meant to originally rule. Of course, go ahead, Iroh nodded. Why? I sighed. Why did you let your brother take your place? Why did you allow him to bring the world you preached to love so much to this state? And why did you let him hurt Azula and Zuko? I had to know what was the reason behind him doing nothing. A complicated question, Iroh said, his emotions going from happy to sad in the blink of an eye. At first, it was the pain of losing my son. Without him I had no reason to fight anymore, and by the moment I was able to think without the loss of my son affecting me. I already knew that ruling the country wasn't my destiny. And Azula and Zuko? I asked, for that I have no excuse, Iroh admitted with tears in his eyes. I was a coward for letting my little brother hurt them so bad. Clearing the tears away, he looked at me. You know, it haunts me. Every night I can hear the screams of Zuko as the fire of his own father burns his face, scarring him beyond repair. Every night I have that awful dream as the reminder I could have stopped Ozai. I had more than enough time to stop the Agni Kai and defend my nephew, but instead I looked away, and that is something I will never forgive myself. I see, I sighed, not knowing what to think of his answer, but at least one thing was clear, he was sincere about his regret. Well, let's get started, I added, getting into position. Chapter 81. Knowing this fight was nothing more than a visual aid for my firebending training, I decided to fight him mostly using my sword, with a little bit of fire on the side, so with that in mind I started the duel, or training match. Extending my left arm at him in a quick and fast motion as my hand opened towards my opponent, followed by several bursts of blue fireballs, which Iroh stopped head-on with little to no effort. What Iroh didn't seem to notice was that I hadn't intended to attack him, at least not fully, because more than a few fireballs crashed into the earth, creating a wall of dust. With a smile, I rushed at him, taking advantage of the rising dust. I positioned myself behind him, and with the blunt end of my sword I swung at him with all my strength, but to my surprise Iroh avoided the attack by jumping over it. You are strong, very strong, but that has made you weak, young Akira, Iroh commented, and all I could think about was, what the fuck was he trying to say? Was this what Zuko always felt? How being strong is making me weak? I'll be honest with you, you are making less sense than a mute's joke without arms, I replied. A mute without, that is just cruel, Iroh shook his head. What I meant to say is, your overwhelming power has made you predictable. Predictable? Me? Was that true? It couldn't be. I was always innovating, looking for ways to improve my skills. Being predictable would infer I had a pattern when fighting, one that was painfully easy to counter should someone with enough experience fight me. Let's see how predictable is this. I shot back, swinging my sword downwards, creating a powerful fire slash that Iroh once again managed to dodge. I have no doubts you can beat me, Iroh chuckled, but the fact is you are easy to read, young Akira. Your own power has blinded you. The old you was terrifying. Pakka told me so, innovating beyond the norm at a terrifying rate, but now? You lack the creativity you once had, so, you are saying I ran out of ideas? I chuckled. When was the last time you invented something new? Iroh asked. I can't believe it, the old man was right. When was the time I had a new innovative idea? Since when did I care about forms? I became a formidable waterbender by innovating the style to fit my needs, and here I am, emulating Azula and others. Even now I can see your current style is heavily influenced by Azula. If you want my advice, I would recommend you to go back to your roots. Your style was having no style. A formless form was what made you a force to be reckoned with. Copying and imitating others is helpful, but if you let the information you learn define who you are, it will with time weaken you, Iroh added with a smile. Very well, I chuckled. Let's see if I still can rock a formless style. Dropping my sword to the ground, I decided to think out of the box. What could I do that wasn't an imitation of what I had learned? What could I do that was an improvement over something old? And then it hit me, an idea worth trying. With a smile that startled Iroh, I pointed at him with my index finger as I gathered a large amount of flames on it, before launching a narrow beam of fire he barely managed to dodge. The beam pierced a metal bar behind Iroh, showing it was strong enough to pierce or melt its metal. Not that I don't appreciate someone actually taking my advice, but go easy on this old man, Iroh sighed. That was a very deadly technique. I remember you using something similar against Zhao, but with water instead of fire, water bullets. I nodded. Little but powerful. Unfortunately, I can't do that with fire. Fire needs someone pouring power into the flames, unlike water, so instead of a bullet you get a beam. I shrugged. I see, Iroh smiled. But maybe if I create big balls of fire, I can make something similar to my water bullets, with an explosive touch, I said in deep thought. Have you learned this move? Iroh said with a smirk, creating a lightning, before shooting said lightning at me, and by how slow his motions were it was clear he wanted me to dodge so that he could introduce me to his lightning redirection technique. Unfortunately for him, it was time to show him I wasn't as predictable as he had originally assumed. With a smile, I slapped the lightning with the back of my hand to an abandoned house behind me, showing him I was able to redirect lightning without using his method, all thanks to my enormous skill controlling my chi. I smiled. Impressive, Iroh chuckled. That is way more effective and practical than my technique to redirect them. Truly impressive, but it is clear a firebender can't do that, nor a waterbender, meaning you use chi or energy bending to slap the lighting away. I did, I nodded. Well, I give up, Iroh chuckled, throwing his hands into the air as a sign of him accepting his defeat willingly. Very well, I sighed. I wanted to keep fighting you. You seem to inspire my creativity, but I respect your choice. Until next time, young Akira, Iroh smiled, walking away. Well, it wasn't like I had expected this to go, but I had learned a lot, like the fact I had forgotten how I used to learn stuff. I never followed any rules. I made them, and Iroh had made me see that. I will bring cookies to our tea next time, I shouted. That would be lovely, Iroh shouted back. I chuckled at his response, as I walked back to the castle with a few things clear in my mind. For one, I was going to follow Iroh's advice, and two, I was absolutely, most definitely sure Iroh was stronger than Ozai. Even now that he was fat and out of his prime, he could crush his brother. Not sure if the fight would be one-sided, but Iroh would win regardless. A fight between them would be legendary. Too bad I will never see it though. Chapter 82. A few hours after my training match with Iroh, I was left with questions that no matter how hard I tried I had no answers, and frankly, I didn't care for them right now. Was I evading the clear problems of my life? Maybe, but those problems are for future me to solve, right now. Right now I want to fight Aang again, this time without having to enter the Avatar state to defeat him. And considering he was rushing through the mines under the city to help Katara, I knew what I had to do, intercept the little monk and have a little chat with him. Of course, I wasn't an evil bastard. I was going to help Katara survive as long as possible by providing her with more than enough water to fight Azula and Zuko one-on-one. Here we go, I chuckled, breaking the earth underneath me, creating a tunnel to intercept Aang on his way to defend Katara. What in the? Aang said, almost shouting in surprise. Hello little monk, I smiled under my mask, waving at him. If you want to pass, you need to defeat me, or at least entertain me. I don't have time for this, Aang said in a stern tone, trying to run past me, naive little monk. With a sight, I opened up the start of the fight with a powerful palm slam to Aang's chest. A gurgle escaped the stunned monk's mouth as the air of his lungs left him. Taking advantage of his stunned state, I moved my hand to his throat and lifted Aang off the ground, and with something that could be described as a growl I said, You will fight me, Aang. There is no other path. You either give your all and show your progress, or you will regret putting Katara on this situation. Aang stared at me as he scrambled for balance midair before his body was slammed into the tunnel wall behind him. The concussive force of the impact rattled the tunnel. In response, Aang shouted a battle cry and tried to push me off him with airbending attack. At this I let out a soft chuckle, almost as if whispering it, and with a smile after having acquired the response I desired I let him go, dropping the monk midair. letting his body be prey to the universal law of gravity, and as his body slowly fell prey to this law, I turned around and kicked him away with all the strength I could muster before he managed to touch the ground, all while dodging his pitifully predictable air-bending attack. But that wasn't all. Taking a deep breath, I rushed at him, propelling my movement with fire, catching him midway to where my kick would have dropped him, and delivered second brutal attack, a punch to his head, putting Aang in a state of shock as the earth beneath him shattered ever so slightly. The strength behind my punch was strong enough to create a very small crater under Aang, where his body now rested. Oops, I think I overdid it, I said to myself, as a smile played at the edge of my mouth. Surprisingly enough, Aang stood up, bleeding from his head with an enraged expression on his face, very different to what I would expect from the so-called pacifist monk, but it was undeniable. This was what I wanted. I don't like violence. I never will. It brings nothing but destruction. But you are blocking my path to defend Katara, and if I have to defeat you to do so, I will. Are you saying you are willing to kill me to save her? I whistled at that. If so, I have to admit, you have earned my respect, but let me make one thing clear for you: you will never, ever defeat me. But I can't say I don't appreciate the effort. As banal as it is, it makes me feel special. I swore to the monks I would never take a life, but Aang said, hesitation surging through his emotions like a river in the desert. But if I have to put you down to save Katara, I will. I clapped at that, as I laughed. Bravo, bravo. The resolve, the will, the intelligence to know when life must be destroyed is important, though I feel even if you could defeat me, you wouldn't go through with it. But thinking about it is the first step. So bravo, Aang shouted once again, as he tried to capture me with earthbending. Left, right, left, up, down, I hummed, dodging his attacks, and Iroh says I am predictable. Fighting you is like one of those dancing games. On easy mode, spice things up, Aang. Katara needs you. A part of me wondered, why was I being so unnecessarily cruel with him? Did I really want to fight his avatar state so much? Or was Vata dictating my emotions? No. So many questions. Who are you? Aang questioned, shocked at the fact I was toying with him. Who knows? I shrugged, and before Aang had the chance to ask again, something snapped inside of him, knocking him out of the game, as something more powerful took over. This ends now. Aang shouted, his voice changing from his original to a mix of his and a female voice, one that I faintly recognized as Rava. Well, hello, Rava, I chuckled. It's so unlike you to hijack the body of your host. Boy, do I feel special tonight. Aang is ill-suited for this, Rava snarled, creating a ball which was made up of multiple elements, but I will put an end to this. Begone! For the light never loses. I blinked in realization as the fact that I might have not thought about this plan too much was sinking into my brains. With a sigh, I woke up Vatu. As I inspected the width of the tunnel and considering the width of the incoming attack, it was more than clear I had no chance of dodging this. Oh well, time to die or defuse this shit, and I consider myself a diffuser. Using my energy bending, I focused all my power on my palms, with Vatu helping me to control the energy, and with a quick move of my eye broke the attack into nothing, doing something similar to what I had done with Iroh and his lightning. You know, if you want my personal opinion, the light never loses is a pretty sad choice of last words. But, to be fair, at this I let Vatu take control for a bit. He, after all, had to say hi to his beloved sister. It's far from the worst decision you've made today, dear sister. Vatu. Chapter 83, Vatu POV. Rava growled as Akira allowed me to control him. With an angry cry escaping her mouth, she lunged forward, quickly sprinting towards me, bending all the elements at her disposal, well, at least those her current body could, creating a big elemental lance in a pitiful attempt to pierce through me, but reflex kicked in and I ducked forward, slamming her head against the ground. Oof, that had to hurt, Akira commented with a chuckle. Your body is better suited for battle. Rava, on the other hand, has little to work with, I inwardly chuckled. Is that all you have, sister? I asked with a wicked smile painted on my face. I was going to enjoy this, thoroughly. I will end this, Vatu, Rava hissed. All you bring is pain and suffering. I will not let the world succumb into pure chaos. Then, by all means, try to stop me. I cackled as I propelled myself to her at a blinding speed, with a blue fire blade on my right hand. Rava, startled at my speed, noticed an upcoming deadly attack at the last second and only got away with a small, bleeding slice on her torso, at which Akira barked at me, reminding me not to kill the retarded monk, not yet anyway. Fine. I'll play nice as I could. Rava touched her torso, her hand coating in red, and with a glare sprinted at me again, her body glowing white. At this I smiled. She knew deep down she was not going to win a bending match against this body, and when it came to hand combat, Akira heavily outclassed Aang, which means I had the upper hand in both parts, so she only had one choice, energy bending. The reason she had won so many times before in the era before humans, it pained me to admit it, but her energy bending was flawless. Normally, I would try to avoid her energy bending attacks. They are dangerous and very lethal if you don't manage to defuse them, but this time I was confident not only in my own prowess but in the prowess of the partner I had chosen, so with open arms and a smile, our energies clashed together, creating a rumbling echo through the underground tunnel. The weight of my energy was dragging her down, bringing the ever-confident Rava to her knees, but she soon recovered and pushed back hard. We stayed like that for a few seconds before she realized I was toying with her. "You have grown weak, Rava," I said, as I pushed my energy beyond what she could currently counter, sending her a few miles back in the tunnel. "I say, it will take her an hour or so to come back," I whistled as I sat down on a rock nearby to wait for her. "I gave her a few minutes," Akira chuckled. Rava, however, broke our expectations and recovered in less than 10 seconds and took this opportunity to impale my stomach with an earth-bending attack from afar. "So this is physical pain, remarkable," I commented, as I touched the wound with curiosity before healing in the blink of an eye. "How durable are you?" "How durable am I?" "Questions for later," Akira said, clearly surprised I had regenerated a few organs Rava crushed with her attack in the span of a second. "What have you done?" Rava said as she approached me, her body broken and unable to fight anymore. "Is that human even human anymore?" She was angry. How very predictable of her. "Have you corrupted this human that much? Have you no shame?" "Oh dear sister, I didn't corrupt him, though I am not going to lie, I have been trying very hard to do so." I laughed as I heard Akira chuckled in my head. "But all you see right now is the result of his own training. All I am doing is using his skills, and, of course, is only natural. I can use his powers better." I smiled, pointing to where she had impaled me earlier. "He is a very capable healer, using water healing and blood bending to heal his own wounds." I chuckled. "Those two make it easy to regenerate human organs, even limbs, and all you need to do so is a lot of power, and well, knowledge about those two arts, and voila, super regeneration. This, of course, is impossible for normal human beings, but he isn't normal. He never was. He was remade into a body with massive amounts of spiritual energy. He then was blessed by the primordial. And to add a cherry on the top, he then fused with me, adding even more power to that very dangerous mix, the primordials." Rava muttered. "So when you ask if Akira is even human, then I suppose the answer is no. At this point, he is closer to being something that has transcended that puny category, but not entirely by my own hands." I chuckled as I slowly approached her. "So don't be sad you can't win, sister. It's only natural. You are fighting not only a spirit born for war, chaos, and destruction, but the best humanity has to offer. When you compare that to the anorexic boy you are controlling, well, you come up short. I will not lose Vatu, no matter how superior you claim your host to be." Rava snarled. "I have to admit it, sister, you are indeed strong." At this point, our faces were a few inches from each other. "That's if you're not counting me. You know you can't defeat me, don't you, Rava? You might have won this time, but when the Avatar reincarnates, I will come back for you," Rava said, looking down, admitting her defeat. "Right now, ending her life was within my grasp and power. Even if Akira was against the idea, even if he wanted to stop me, I would have more than enough time to kill her before he takes control. But I won't do it. I promised him I would not. A stupid sentiment, but one I shall honor today." "Well, this was fun, but you better hurry up and help the monk's girl." I patted her head. "I had my fun. Be sure to make things more interesting next time. You are letting Aang live?" Rava asked in shock. "I promised my host I would avoid killing you before some events played out." I shrugged, and while the past has proven otherwise, I am a spirit of my word to those I respect. You don't respect anyone. Rava scoffed. That was true. I nodded with a smile. Now go, or stay. To be honest, I don't really care for the girl. You respect me. Chapter 84. After the duel between Vaatu and Rava, things followed the canon pretty much to the letter, with Azula manipulating Zuko into betraying Katara and Iroh, and with Iroh being captured. Things were back to the normal track of events. The Avatar had escaped and Zuko was on his way to realize he was wrong and that there were other ways to restore his honor besides sucking on Ozai. In our way back to the Fire Nation, I had more than enough time to realize something. Zuko didn't like me at all. His emotions would flare every time I tried to engage in conversation with him, and while it bothered me, it was pointless to give the little prince any time of my day. Download app. He questioned deep down how could I associate with Azula, and without answer immediately had me in the same corner he had her, as a psychopath. We should go to the beach. Ty Lee offered with a smile. We finally ended our mission. We deserved to be pampered. The beach episodes, so the time to tell Azula the truth was coming. That would be nice, I said. Very well, Azula nodded. But first Zuko and I need to do some paperwork about this mission, she added with her signature evil smile. While you two do that, I will have some quality time with my family, everything just to avoid Ozai. If I saw him now, I would end up killing him without hesitation. His presence was painful, and I wanted to end him. It's not like you have anything to do in the castle, Zuko growled. I do, I chuckled. Do I need to remind you, there are only 2 royals in here right now? Zuko challenged. I eyed the angry prince with amusement. It's that supposed to scare me? I chuckled. No, Zuko shook his head, lighting his hands on fire, but this should. I looked at him in disbelief and laughed. You are adorable. As soon as I said that, Zuko charged at me, trying to prove. I don't really know. Maybe he was trying to hurt Azula? Or kill himself? Zuko, stop! I shouted, getting in the middle of the clearly retarded prince. You can't win. Zuko was shocked, and with a hurt expression growled, Are you saying he's stronger than me? Azula at this, started to laugh uncontrollably. Oh Zuzu. He's stronger than me. Did you really think I would date anything but the strongest man? She pointed at me, with pride, but be my guest. Go ahead and die. Let him, I said with faint smile on my face, if he wants to end his life. Who are we to deny him of that noble wish? Guys, our auras are getting very dark. Maybe it's time to change the subject? Ty Lee offered with a weak smile, trying to defuse the situation. Overconfidence is unbecoming of a warrior, Zuko stated. No, overconfidence is the privilege of the mighty. At this point I had started to walk towards him, and if you don't back down, you will soon see how mighty I am, Prince of Nothing. Zuko, please, I muttered, fear being the most prominent emotion she was feeling right now. Let this go. You should count yourself lucky, Zuko said, walking away. Next time, it won't be like this. Threaten me with a good time. I chuckled. All right, Prince, you won my respect. You didn't back down out of fear, so as a gift when the time comes for us to fight, I will not kill you, but I will make you face symmetrical. Now that would be a sight to see, Azula giggled. You are diabolically cute. I rolled my eyes at her. Oh God, it's over, Ty Lee muttered, looking like a frightened cat. No one died. Yeah, Zuko POV. I hated Akira, the way he walked, the way he talked. Everything was like he thought himself to be above others, above me, above my family, above the royals. He saw himself as untouchable just because he was dating Azula, and soon he would learn by my hands that was not the case, as if I was going to believe he was stronger than Azula. If that was the case, he would not be here, breathing. I know my sister, she's incapable of love, and of letting others surpass her. If Akira was stronger than her, he would be in a morgue by now. Zuko! I said as she entered my room, on the ever-moving ship taking us to the Fire Nation. Please, let Akira be. I beg you. She was afraid. But why, if that bastard did something to her? I will kill him. Did he do something to you? No, he's a good friend. No, more like a good acquaintance, but I have seen him fight. He doesn't fight to win, he fights to kill, my said shaking at the end. I saw him kill one of the generals in the Fire Nation with a single fire punch. He blasted his upper half with a single attack. He's a criminal? I asked. It was an Agni Kai, Mike clarified. Maybe he's strong, but I won't let him walk over me, or you. I stated, maybe he did know how to fight, but killing a general was not a feat to boast about. Azula could easily defeat all of them, and so could I. That feat merely told me he was a competent fighter, nothing more. If this is what you want, then go. I shouted, I won't stand and watch you die. Just because you have to prove you are the most macho or something. With that she slapped me and stormed off my room. I will show you I muttered, I will show everyone how strong I have become. Was that really worth it, Zuzu? Azula chuckled as she entered my room. Not that I don't enjoy the show, but really, why must you make it so easy to crush your ambitions? Start small, brother, fight a blind kid, and you might have a fighting chance. I know your game, Azula, I growled. You are probably tired of him, and you want me to do your dirty job, so be glad I'm happy to do it. Impressive, Azula clapped her hands in amusement. You know, I never expect anything from you, and yet you manage to disappoint me. Oh well, she shrugged, do whatever you want, Zuzu. I will enjoy the imminent result of you idiotic thoughts regardless. Chapter 85, Aang POV. I remembered that fight clearly on the Earth Kingdom tunnels, very clear. Even after I was knocked into the back seat where no sound reached me, I could still see what was going on. That man, the firebender that stood in my way to save Katana, was no firebender, for he had the power to control the elements like me, earth, water, fire, and possibly air. There was another avatar, one that stood against the peace I was trying to achieve, one that followed Ozai and his reign of terror, one that was stronger, more experienced, and had no qualms about killing. I can't do this, I muttered in tears, as Katara entered the tent with Toph and Sokka. One thing was fighting Ozai, but another avatar? I don't think he's that evil, Toph commented, and immediately Katara was glaring at her. What? If the guy was evil as you say he is, he would have killed you instead of letting you go. All I'm saying is that the guy sounds like someone looking for a challenge. How dare you? Katara hissed. He beat Aang to a pulp, and then pushed him to fight Azula and Zuko, and subsequently lost because he had no strength to fight back, and not only that, he works for the Fire Nation. He is bad. Katara. Toph has point, Sokka pointed out. The guy is obviously stronger than Aang, and yet he didn't kill him. He almost did. Katara growled. But he didn't, Sokka sighed. Look, in times of war, mercy brings nothing but destruction. Why let Aang, the one person that could eventually possibly match him, live? Maybe he wants a tougher challenge? I offered, thinking perhaps Toph was right. Perhaps, Sokka nodded with a faint smile, but I think he simply didn't want to end you for personal reasons. The way I see it, the guy is not totally loyal to the Fire Nation. If he was, well, no offense, Aang, but you wouldn't be here right now. None taken, Sokka was right. If the guy was as evil as I wanted him to be, I would have more than a few bruises around my body. That doesn't change the fact he nearly killed Aang, Katara said, clenching her fists. No, but maybe we could gain a new ally, Sokka added, with an overly serious tone for him. Look, the guy is not loyal to the Fire Nation, and if we play our cards right, we might have a secret weapon to end this war once and for all. An ally? Katara almost shouted. After what he did, never. Katara, this is war, and you don't win wars with the power of the heart. Sokka sighed. Look, I'm not saying we have to befriend the guy. He obviously has no moral compass, but we also don't have to make an enemy out of him. We simply have to exchange something for something, his help for our help. Sokka is right, Toph stated. Sometimes political alliances are necessary to win wars. This is not the time to get sentimental. And what can we offer him? I asked, wondering what we could do to have him on our side. Are you considering this after what he did to you? Katara asked, in shock. Katara. I wish I could win this war alone, but you weren't there. The gap between us could take decades for me to reach. I can't fight him and Ozai. I was weaker than him, that much was clear. Ozai, Zuko, Azula and him, all of this is too much for me, Aang. Katara sighed, if this is what you want, I will support you, but I won't like it, alright. Sokka smiled, well, Aang, to answer your question, we have something he hasn't. By the information you shared with us, he only showed 3 out of 4 elements, you mean? Yeah, you will teach him airbending, in exchange for his help against Ozai, Sokka nodded. Wouldn't that make him more dangerous? Toph inquired, I'm all for allying with the guy. I was the one to say he wasn't all bad, but I'm not so sure about giving the guy that swept the floor with twinkle toes on his super twinkle state. I'm with Toph on that one, Katara nodded. Me too, I nodded. Aang, everyone, you guys are not seeing the bigger picture, Sokka chuckled. Aang, tell me, what did the monks teach you about airbending? Well, the monks taught us it was one of the many ways to become one with the universe, that by letting go of our anger and other earthly desires we would be enlightened, escaping what made other humans prone to the seductive ways of evil, I answered, and then it clicked. I see that you get it now, Sokka smiled. I want you to change him while you teach him, like the monks did for generations. That sounds like a terrible idea, Toph sighed, but oh well, don't come to crying if the guy becomes even more godlike, I don't know. But perhaps it is worth giving it a shot. Katara said, somewhat uncertain. Maybe Sokka is right, maybe I'm not meant to defeat him, but to guide him into a better path, I said with resolution, at least it's worth a shot. If this backfires, I will kick your asses in the spirit realm, Toph smiled. So, are we in? Sokka asked us with a smile, and we all nodded, though some of us were more eager than others. IROPOV, I was so close to reaching him. I saw it in his eyes, he wanted to help the girl, he wanted to fight for the good of others, but it wasn't enough, he was still blind to the truth path ahead of him. Iroh, that voice, Akira. What a pleasant surprise, I said, forcing a smile. How could I smile, my nephew, the one person besides my beautiful Lu-Ten that I loved like a son, had failed to see the good inside of him, and was now in a path where only suffering awaited him, and to top that I didn't have any tea. Put that frown upside down. I brought tea and cookies, Akira chuckled, and don't worry. I give your dear nephew a month at most before he goes out to help the Avatar. The other one, I blinked in mild shock, you think? I asked with hope. He is killing himself on the inside now, and by how he feels he's about to break at any point now. Don't worry, Akira chuckled. I smiled at him, tears flowing from my eyes like a river with a broken dam. You made this old man very happy. I was afraid he had lost his way, but perhaps this is what he needed. It is, Akira nodded, as he served me some delicious tea and cookies, while I wondered where the guards were, and don't worry about the guards. I took care of them. Oh, so he did. What an interesting young man. Chapter 86. Light shone from the fireplace inside the house I had rented near beach for myself. After all, soon after our mission and arrival to the Fire Nation, Azula had taken us here to enjoy after she had finished the required paperwork after our trip. This was her way of treating us, and mentally abused Zuko, and while most of the group was in fact enjoying this little getaway, I was not. I couldn't, not at all, not with knowing the fact that soon my relationship with Azula would change. Permanently for the better or for the worse. What can I do? I muttered, sitting on the bed, taking in the air in the room that smelled of ash and dust, showing whoever owned the apartment hadn't cleaned, but it was okay, it was giving me the privacy I wanted to try and formulate my thoughts. Maybe, I just had to do it. The more I delayed this, the more likely things were going to work against me. I had waited long enough. Besides, she is coming to me right now. Right now it was the best time to do so. Knock knock. I gripped the end of my bed, before reluctantly standing up and opening the door. Azula, I welcomed, as she smiled walking inside the house. I still don't understand why you would rent a place like this. It's so plebeian, Azula chuckled. Azula, we need to talk. As soon as those words left my mouth, fear, anger, and anxiety flared within her, and I panicked. I wasn't ready to talk about this. Not yet. I was wondering what activities did you have planned for tomorrow. This was for the best. I told myself over and over again inside my head as if those words were enchantment to make me feel better. I just needed more time to find a way to avoid damaging her more than she already is. I wasn't that bad of a person. I was just looking out for her. Excuses, but they were the ones that kept me from ending it all. Well, I wanted to try volleyball, Azula said, relief being the most prominent emotion within her right now. That would be lovely, I smiled, as I motioned her to follow me out of the house. Let's go and see the others. Very well, Azula nodded, taking my hand. As we walked through the hot sand of the beach, I could feel my doubts shaking and my moral compasses going haywire within me, but I silenced them with pure sheer will. The walk itself was uneventful, nothing worthy of attention, not that I had much of it right now anyway. Azula, Akira over here. Ty Lee waved at us as we approached, snapping me out of my long revere. As always, the duo of full lovers glared at me, with my being more of a pleading glare, and with Zuko being more of a challenging glare. Let's just fight, Prince. I am getting tired of your constant glares, so let's just do it, I sighed. I won't kill you, so don't worry. Guys, we're on vacation. Can we try to get a... Ty Lee, oddly enough, was once again trying to be the voice of reason, but Zuko cut her off. I accept this challenge, Zuko nodded, feeling overly confident in his skills. I could tell, it was quite obnoxious feeling his emotions. Very well, I yawned, and for some reason this made him angry. The rules are simple. First one to make to surrender, die or knockout loses. I thought you didn't want to resort to killing during this fight? Zuko inquired, and I shook my head in answer. Or perhaps you think you stand a chance against me if you go with the intent to kill? I yawned as I chuckled in amusement. No, that rule about the killing or not killing is for you, so that you make this more interesting. It will still be sad and pathetic, but at least you will feel a small sense of accomplishment from going all out. Like a moth flying to the sun, it feels happy a few seconds before dying. Our duel started with Zuko shooting a wild barrage of fireballs at me, and instead of dodging the upcoming attack, I rolled my eyes at him, and with a board and a single hand I blowed the candles he was throwing at me. You will need to go a bit higher, Prince Zuko. I smiled, making a gesture to tell him it was time for him to go all out. Zuko at this growled and sprinted at me, ready to kill me. I could see it in his eyes, dashing towards me, trying to bring the fight to my location, but all he did once he managed to close the distance gap between us was throw fire into the nothingness, for none of his attacks were even close to hit me. Alright, this is getting boring, I chuckled, as I continued to dodge each of his futile attempts to attack me, little by little enraging him. Kick to your left side, I announced, kicking him with my right leg to the ground. I even told you where to look, I pouted. You think a single kick will take me down? Zuko snarled, jumping to his feet angrily. Don't feel proud of knocking me down once. It would be embarrassing if you did, seeing as your defeat is unavoidable. I laughed at that. Oh, Prince. I have to admit, I am proud of you, not of your strength, that's sad, but of disillusion. It takes a big man to do what you are doing. Sticking to your bravado to the bitter end, even when the gap in our skill is massively big, you still believe you have a chance, and that is something to be proud of, I sighed. All this unhinged pride you feel, I will soon rectify this. You have tainted and insulted my honor long enough. I will, Zuko said, but before he continued with his monologue, I stopped him. All right, stop your monologue. I chuckled. Let's just end this, all right? I understand you want to brag and in a way, odd way, show your girl how much to a man are, but time is of essence, and while there's absolutely nothing I'd rather do than stand here and listen to you bluster at me until the end of times, I actually have some shit to do later. Volleyball perhaps, I smiled. So he is the deal. Go all out, against me, bring forth the strongest fire you can muster, if you insist. Zuko growled, firing his strongest attack at me, and needless to say it was quite the disappointment. With little to no effort I effortlessly disarmed his attack with a single hand, bringing down the big fireball into nothingness, leaving the little prince, Zuko in shock, Azula pleased, and Mai entirely worried. A minute passed after that, and Zuko had yet to say something. He was simply staring at me. You know, if I had a watch, I'd be looking at my wrist really condescendingly right now. I chuckled. Who am I kidding? I'm enjoying this too much. I will not be humiliated. Zuko said, snapping out of his comatose state. trying to change his approach from a bending match to hand-to-hand combat, a very big mistake, for as soon as he got within my range I rendered him unconscious with a quick lightning-fast jab to his jaw. Prince, you have no need to have someone humiliating you, you are exceptional at doing so. Chapter 87, and the days went by in our vacation with the guilt eating away at me from the inside out. The feeling of loathing I had for myself, for not telling her, was burning me, making me feel bad about myself. I was crossing a line I should have never crossed. And that is why, no matter how horrible her reaction was, I had to tell her, I had to come clean. And for that sole reason, I had invited her to an isolated place, where, if she lost control, she would not burn the whole island. Akira, Azula greeted me with a smile, walking towards me. Azula, I have to tell you something, I said, as hundreds of voices whispered to me not to do it, to keep things as they were, that I wouldn't hurt her if I did that lying was the answer, or that I wasn't lying, just keeping information from her, but all of that was nothing but a pat in the back for my stupid behavior, Azula. I'm not who you think I am. Azula stared at me, and with concern asked, what do you mean? I could feel her worry under her steel-cold face. The only thing about me that is not a lie is that my name is Akira and that I like you, I said almost as a whisper. Explain, Azula said, almost snarling the words out. I come from the Water Tribe. Since the monk is one of the two avatars, he represents the light and I represent the darkness, but don't pay too much attention to that, it's an abstract concept, I said with a faint smile. Is this a joke? Azula laughed out loud, faking her laugh. Should I be laughing at this? Seeing that the best thing now was to prove to her that if I was telling her the truth, I used water control to pour the drinks, as I replied, it's not a joke. You lied to me, you slept with me, you waited until now. You used me to tell me you are like everyone else. At the end of that, Azula was throwing a lightning bolt at me, which I stopped with my index finger, redirecting the attack to a nearby rock. I didn't use you, I shot back. I still want to be with you. The only thing that changed were my origins, nothing more. I'm still the same Akira you fell for, ha ha ha, Azula laughed. Love? You were a tool for me, a toy for pleasure and war. Don't flatter yourself so much, she screamed as she continued to attack me. Had I known you were from that filthy tribe, I would have killed you in your sleep. Azula, please, this doesn't have to go this way, I said, trying to reach out to her. I wonder what face your mother will make when I burn her alive. Will she cry in pain? Or in hatred for you? Azula said with a delirious laugh, or your lovely family. I can't wait to skin them alive. Sakura and her family would now be in danger, all because I couldn't keep in my pants. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I hurt you, and I'm sorry I have to hurt you to protect those you are threatening. Dodging her attacks, I positioned myself in front of her, immobilizing her in a rock prison, where she tried to bite me. Fueled with pain and regret for what I was about to do, I put one thumb on her forehead and the other one on her chest as I stared at her, and taking a deep breath I proceeded to take away her ability to bend fire. After a few seconds of dark lights related to the delicate balance of energy bending of this technique, I released Azula, who immediately tried to attack me, but her attacks were empty of her normal blue fire. Arg! Azula screamed, throwing punches in the air all while aiming at me with no result. What did you do? I took away your favorite weapon, I answered. If you want your fire back, you will stay out of this war. When this is over I will look for you, and I will give you back your power, but if you intervene, you will stay like this forever, I answered. You think this is going to stop me? Azula laughed. The only thing you got out of this was that now I'll have to do what I wanted to do to your family with my own hands. Normally I wouldn't give a fuck, and I don't, but she needs a new start, so, if you truly want to help her, you might have to ask the Mother of Faces to grant her a new face without memory. No amount of love will fix what years of damage did to her head, Vaatu offered. No. I guess not, I said in a low tone, really taking in Vaatu's advice. I guess it's time for you to see your mother again. Are you going to kill me? Azula laughed in a delirious way. No, I said, knocking her out with a quick chop to the neck. I'm going to kill the damage everyone did to you, including the one I did. Call the fat cat here, Vaatu growled, time is of the essence. I chuckled at that, how bitter everything was now, but at least, I would give her a way out, an escape from her nightmare. I am mad as a hatter. I shouted. Did someone call the all-adorable? Cheshire said, appearing out of nowhere. Oh, what happened to the little psycho? He pointed to Azula. It's a long story. I said, avoiding the subject. Let's go to the Forgetful Valley. Okay. Cheshire said with little concern, changing his form. Soon she would be fine, in a better place, with her mother at her side. With a life without unreasonable expectations, without so much pain, without so many betrayals, without Ozai. This was for the best. I knew that, or at least, I wanted to believe that. Chapter 88. I flew with Azula out cold to the Forgetful Valley, without stopping. This time it took me less than a few hours to get there, and at one of the spiritual pools, I called for the Mother of Faces, using Batu as the connection between my and the primordial. Once a year, the Mother of the Faces said in anger, appearing in front of the month. Once a year is my limit, my rule, the most I can possibly deal with you human beings, and you come and disrupt my slumber. The air around the valley seemed to cool with an ominous edge. I didn't mean to, but she needs you, I said with reverence. The Mother of the Faces stared at me, and as she looked at Azula, her hostility subsided. I know her. I know her mother. It seems they both have suffered a lot. What do you want? I want you to give her what she never had, a family. I know her mother is close, and I know you can alter memories, so can you perhaps alter their memories to make Azula as a new person part of them? I wanted to offer her the chance to have what I couldn't offer her, a chance to have a lovely mother and a normal father. The Mother of Faces looked at me for a long second, a noble and yet cowardly decision, but I will grant you this request. She has suffered more than most. Perhaps a new beginning is what she needs. Thank you, I said, with a faint smile, but this was far from over. As payment for this request, you will in turn forget this valley and everything about it, and never come back, the Mother of the Faces said in a cold and cruel tone. Do you accept? I do, I nodded. Then it shall be done, the Mother of Faces stated, and the radiance of 1,000 suns. I felt my body being forcibly displaced, and in the blink of an eye, I appeared in a distant desert, along with Cheshire. Where was I? I muttered. I remembered taking Azula somewhere, but where? Great, we got Men in Black, Batu muttered. Don't worry, your crazy ex is fine, but thanks to you I don't remember shit about why and how is she okay, which I really don't care, but the fact I can't remember annoys me. I also get the feeling she's okay, and I have the feeling it's best not to question it, I sighed. Good, I do not want to have any more blank spaces in my memory, Batu sighed. Not to bother anyone, but can anyone tell me, why are we in the desert? Cheshire inquired. I doubt anyone needs such a big potty. God, I wonder who cleans it. With a sigh, I ordered Cheshire to take me back to the Fire Nation. I had to take Sakura and her family out of there. Before I killed Ozai, I had nothing holding me back from ending his life, but even so, I would not rush it. I would plan the grand finale like a maestro of the orchestra. The world deserved that much. Finally, we can start talking about something I actually like, Batu said, unusually happy. I have a list of things we can try with him, so bear with me for a second. I mean, you will listen to me, human. Alright, with that out of the way, here are my ideas. For option 1, how about, if we use ropes to tie and lower Ozai above a pyramid-shaped seat of torture with the point inserted into the ass, though we can make him a hole for that. I am open to suggestions. Anywho, little by little, we would add weights with leading to death by impalement. Jesus fucking Christ, where are you getting those ideas? The humans of your world are delightful chaotic, now shut up. I have more ideas, Batu said, with a giddy tone of excitement. I also have this one I want to try, and I find it quite ironic, the brazen bull. But instead of fire and smoke, extreme colds, and oxygen deprivation, you need to stop. See that shit in my head, which I don't remember watching, to begin with. I chuckled. It was weird seeing him so excited. The human mind saves everything your eyes have ever seen, even if it was for a second. Your brain saves it. Normally this information is discarded if you don't think is essential, but thanks to my powers, recovering such delicious memories is a breeze, Batu stated. I also have this one original idea, and where you bend each and every single blood cell in his body to heat up, slowly but surely killing him, or we could stop the flow of oxygen on his blood, but for those two you need to master blood bending. So Batu had a thing for torture. Great, we'll see how we end him. Once we get to that point, for now, try to decide between those three options. 3? I have like 80 more I wanted to share with you, but I suppose it's fair to narrow it down, Batu sighed. I will have my decision by then. Well, it seems I have a new thing to deal with now, Batu's new interest in the ancient art of torture. I wonder if in the end is me who is corrupting him, instead of the other way around. Oh well, you corrupting me? PSFFFF. You are barely showing me there are other ways to enjoy the chaotic rule of the cosmos. A mere human corrupting corruption itself. Talk about hubris, Batu laughed. I know you watch anime in my head, and now you enjoy medieval torture, so... I think I am right, I snorted. I do not watch anime. I find it disgusting, Batu growled. Mother of Faces POV, Akira, the broken piece had come back, with an even more broken soul and a different one that had been complete, but shattered by its environment, one that cried for help from the inside out. Soon, you will have the family you always wanted, the love you always desired, forgetting all about the world outside this valley, I said in a soothing tone as I weaved her a new face, a new destiny. Why did you erase his memory? My loyal spirit wolf asked. I know for a fact you were happy to help him with her, so why? It's for the best, I answered. And why did you take away his feelings for her? My wolf asked. To change his fate for the better. Not all loves lead to a happy ending, some lead to destruction. I smiled, patting my loyal servant in the head. In time, he will be grateful for what I did, but until that time comes, he must forget ever loving her. He still has a role to play. Chapter 89. After suffering the destiny every human that had the bad luck of seeing aliens in the Men in Black universe had suffered, I decided to go directly to the Fire Nation, mostly to evacuate Sakura and her family, but primarily Sakura. The rest was not of my concern. Then I would kill Ozai, but right now I didn't feel like fighting an army. In fact, I didn't feel anything at all. Right now everything was odd. I felt like I was operating under a fog, with everything feeling a little unreal, like I was walking underwater. Batu said that was normal, that it would go away. But still, it felt awful. Cheshire, remember to wake me up a few minutes before our objective, I said, as I got comfortable on his back. You got it, boss, Cheshire purred. Ty Lee POV, Azula and Akira were missing. One moment they were here, and the next, they were gone, and by the looks of where they had their last date, it seemed they had a fight. It seems they broke up, and more, I said with a grim tone, maybe they killed each other. But, isn't Akira, like, stronger than Azula? If they did have a fight, Akira would have won, but he wasn't here, which either meant he escaped after killing Azula, or they eloped. I hope it is the last one. Whatever happened here is no longer important. They have been missing for 2 weeks, Zuko sighed. We have to go back and report them missing. He added, and I could see his aura flickering. He was indecisive about something, but what? Yeah. I just hope they are okay. I sighed. This really put my aura in a blue sad tone. I liked Akira. He made Azula less scary. Very well, I nodded. So we leave tomorrow then, I sighed. Yes, Zuko and I nodded. Sokka POV, the masked man, if we managed to get him on our side, we would win this war. 2 avatars fighting together would bring this tyranny to a well-deserved end. But first, we had to locate him, and considering he is with Azula's group, it was safe to assume he lives in the Fire Nation capital, and considering we were heading that way, it was nothing but optimal to try and find him. With Toph on our side, it should be easy. So, what is our plan? Aang inquired with a smile. We infiltrate, you learn the bases of fire bending, while Toph and I look for him. She has sensed the guy before, and is the only one with a vast field of view, foot view, I stated. Yes. Blind girl for the win. Toph cheered. As for you, Katara, you will keep an eye on Aang. making sure he doesn't draw any attention to him, I told Katara. You got it, Katara nodded with determination. I have one question. What happens if the guy says no, and tries to capture us? I mean, I am awesome, but I don't think I can bring an entire army alone, Toph said, with a concerned expression. First, I don't think he would do that, and second, you would have me by your side, so you would not be alone, I answered. That's what I said, alone, Toph nodded. Toph, you would have me. I smiled. All right. Toph and a half, Toph chuckled. For the last time I can still fight. I screamed, digging my hands into the table. Meh, Toph chuckled. At this point she is doing it just to annoy you, Sokka, and you make it easy for her, Katara sighed. Bossy is right, Toph nodded. Who are you calling bossy? Katara inquired with an angry smile. Oh, geez, I don't know. Toph chuckled. Oh yeah, you, okay, we are getting out of track. I coughed before they started to fight. Last time I ended with a concussion as collateral damage. I do not want to repeat that. Sokka is right, Aang nodded. Let's get back to the planning part of this meeting, Akira POV. I was woken up by my alarm clock going off in vibrating mode, aka Cheshire purring like a machine gun. We have arrived, our destination is on the right, Cheshire chuckled. Jesus, you purr very loud, and strong. I chuckled, realizing I felt better, still as if I was under a fog, but this time it felt like the fog cleared itself a bit. Now, how do we proceed? Do I let Ursok know so that he can start burning this place down? Cheshire said, changing the colors of his fur to look like a recon uniform. He was really into the rescue mission. I don't think we're fugitives, just yet, so let's go with a less complicated approach, I chuckled. Which is? Cheshire asked, changing his fur back to normal. Just going in, grabbing Sakura and reaching out, I answered. That was my plan so far. And if obstacles presented themselves, I would just burn them away, or waterbend them away. I was beyond the point I cared to hide my powers. All right, Cheshire purred, can I scratch the head maid on the way out? Why? I asked. She said cats are ugly and stupid, and as I am a cat I must defend my honor. Cheshire hissed, how dare she say I am ugly? I am a cat, we can't be ugly, sure, just don't scar her, I chuckled. Okay, Cheshire pouted as we descended into the house, taking advantage of the dark night to mask our presence. Once inside the house, I walked to Sakura's room and woke her up by throwing her a pillow. What in the... Akira, why did you do that? Sakura said, waking up. We have to leave. I technically killed the Fire Princess, so we have at most a day or two before they find out. I whispered, close to her ear as to avoid any prying ears in the house from hearing it, even though I felt the room was empty with my elemental senses it was best to avoid. Oh, fuck. Chapter 90. After convincing Sakura and her family to leave, I went to the prison where they had Iroh to find that he had already escaped, which meant that Zuko was about to betray his father. I am never going to understand why didn't Zuko kill him during the eclipse. He had the chance. His reason not to do so was stupid beyond comprehension. If you have a shot at Hitler, you take it. You can't walk away saying, "It's not my destiny." Then again, I am also letting him live, but at least I am sure I will kill him. It has never been a matter of if, but of when. Cheshire, I said, looking to the Fire Nation from above the skies with a dry look, take them to the Northern Water Tribe. With that said, I jumped out of Cheshire's back, in a surge of impulsiveness. Did I have a plan? No. Did I want to do something specifically? No, but something told me I had to go alone in this part of my journey. No! My rival! Ursok screamed as he saw me descend to the ground full speed. I chuckled at that and focused on slowing my landing with waterbending. I'll be fine. I shouted back. Once I found myself on the ground, I decided once again on an impulse to go to the castle. I wanted to leave Ozai with a friendly warning that Aang was not the one who was going to kill him, it was me. I was going to rip him apart, tearing him out of my sight forever, but not today. If I did it today, I would put the country on a political mess. No. I had to wait for Zuko to realize dear old Data was bad, which considering Iroh escaped it must be any time soon. I chuckled at my thoughts and shook my head off in amusement before I blasted off to the castle, knocking every soldier in my way, not because they were trying to stop me, but because I could, and it would set a nice tone to the threat I was making myself to be to Ozai. Ozai! I shouted, kicking the doors to the throne room open with earthbending in an explosion of dust and dirt. Sorry for interrupting your meeting, but I really don't care. Ozai glared at me, anger being his most prominent emotion, so much it was almost leaking out of his body, creating an almost red-looking glow around him. Wait, I am not seeing things. Ozai is actually glowing red. It doesn't matter, I'll figure that out later. You will kneel, and accept your execution with honor, Ozai shouted, and I laughed like I haven't done in months. You dare to laugh at the Fire Lord? One of the men inside the throne room growled, his emotions depicted clearly he wanted to fight, and I had no time waste with him. I gathered the water around him, and with a single move of my hand, I pushed the water I had gathered inside him, filling him up through every crack, every cut, and every hole on his body, without letting the water get out. I held this for a few seconds before he exploded in a blossoming explosion of gore. That's a new one, I chuckled, name pending, Fear. Fear took control of everybody in the room except Ozai, who simply looked at me with curiosity and anger. You are the Avatar. Ozai hissed, finally vocalizing something. I guess you are technically correct, I hummed, but I am not the one you were hunting though. Believe me, unlike Aang, I would have come here to kill you, so congratulations, you choose the right Avatar to follow. 10 out of 10, I winked. There are 2 avatars? Lies! Ozai growled. One is a bald prepubescent kid. I don't know what else to tell you, I shrugged. If he didn't want to believe, it was his deal. It doesn't matter anyway, 1 or 10, they will all kneel before me, before losing their heads, Ozai said as he stood up from his seat, walking towards me, trying to intimidate me. Ozai, I didn't come here to fight you, I chuckled. No, you came here to die, Ozai growled, throwing a powerful stream of fire at me, strong enough that I saw the difference between Zuko and him, and it was massive, but I remained unfazed, unmoving, meeting his attack head-on. After the smoke cleared up, I asked while cleaning my clothes with waterbending, are you done throwing a tantrum? You will learn to respect me before you die. Ozai barked. I think it most likely to expect Aang killing someone, than to expect respect from me, especially to you. I sighed, rolling my eyes at him. I came here to let you know, you have till the comet to plan how to defeat me. I will come for you, and I will kill you, not because I want to save the world, fuck that, not because I want revenge, and certainly not because you are a threat to me. No, I do it because I will enjoy the crap out of it. I heard Vaatu shout, I'm sorry, we will enjoy it, you think. You can defeat me. Ozai screamed in rage, but before he was able to attack once again, I kicked the ground and forced the columns and any other vital structure in the throne room to collapse. Maybe I should have just karate chopped him in the neck. Oh well, he survived that. I sighed, feeling his heartbeat with my seismic sense. He was the only one though. The irony is there, but I am too lazy to point it out. I have the perfect way to kill him. Let's burn him alive like humans did to witches in your world. But before you do that, take his bending away. His death would most ironic, huh? Someone sure was excited to kill Ozai, damn. That's the end of this tale for now. Thank you for watching and I'll see you in the finale. Make sure to support the author linked in the description and yeah, peace.